From the time we are young, we are told that our value is carried in our bones. We are taught that destiny announces itself through strength, power, and the creature waiting beneath our skin. Every old tale promises transformation, and the weak will one day become strong, the patient will finally be rewarded, and truth will always rise where everyone can see it. But when you are standing in a banquet hall surrounded by wolves strong enough to rip through steel, and you are the only person whose body has never transformed into anything at all, those stories begin to sound like lies. Some of us were never given a place in the fairy tale. I understood that on the night they ordered me to sing. They did not ask because they wanted beauty. They were not interested in music or art. They wanted amusement, because cruelty hidden beneath laughter leaves no bruise that anyone can point to. The Alpha King had come to visit our pack for the first time in 10 years. Officially, it was called an inspection. Everyone knew the truth. Our Alpha had grown weak, rival packs were pressing against our borders, and the King had come to decide whether we were still worthy of existing on our own. If he judged us unfit, our lands would be divided among stronger territories and our bloodline scattered like ashes in the wind. For weeks, the entire pack had prepared for his arrival. Every unmated female had polished herself into perfection. They practiced the way they walked, the angle of their smiles, and the graceful submission expected before a powerful male. Rumours said the king still had no Luna and no mate, and in our world, even a king was considered incomplete without one. I was not among the women hoping to catch his eye. I was barely considered part of the gathering at all. In a society where the wolf, inside, you determined whether you were predator or prey, I was something lower than prey. I was nothing. At 23, I had never shifted. I had never felt my bones crack and reshape, never known the fierce freedom of racing through the forest on 4 legs. They called me an Omega, though even that title felt too generous. An Omega still possessed a wolf. Somewhere inside every Omega, an animal slept and waited. Inside me, there had only ever been silence. When I was a child, physicians examined me again and again. Their hands were cold and detached, as they pressed along my spine and skull, searching for an obstruction, a deformity, or some explanation for why my wolf would not appear. They found no physical cause, which somehow made the answer worse. My wolf was not trapped. She was not asleep. She simply did not exist. In a pack governed by fang, claw, and bloodline, someone fully human was considered less than useless. My existence itself felt like an insult to everything they believed made us superior. My father, the pack beater and the Alpha's closest advisor, had never forgiven me for bringing that shame into his household. Yet my failure to shift was not the only humiliation the physicians discovered. With the same clinical calm, they announced that my womb was damaged beyond use, scarred, collapsed, and incapable of carrying a child. Whether it came from the same defect that had taken my wolf or from some separate cruelty of fate, the result was the same. I would never bear children, never carry the future of a pack, and never fulfill the most basic role expected of a she-wolf. I was not merely wolfless. I was barren. In our world, that made me disposable. My father's solution was simple and merciless: keep me out of sight. I existed in the narrow space between being tolerated and being exiled. I performed the lowest household duties, remained silent during pack gatherings, and ate in the kitchen beside the elderly, the injured, and anyone else the pack preferred not to display. I was allowed to remain as long as I never forced anyone to remember I was there. Eventually, I learned how to live around the grief. I buried it so deeply that I could breathe without hearing it howl every moment of the day. I still had my books. I still had my voice. Most importantly, I had my stories. At night, alone in the cramped room at the far edge of the pack house, I wrote fairy tales. I filled page after page with romance, magic, broken curses, and impossible transformations. In my stories, love could see beyond appearances, The wounded could be made whole, and happy endings did not belong only to the strong. Perhaps it was pathetic, but those stories were mine. On the evening the king arrived, I had been assigned to the kitchen. My work was to wash dishes, arrange serving trays, and remain far away from the great hall where the people who counted would dine. I was grateful. The less they saw me, the fewer opportunities they had to hurt me. Then Angelia came looking for me. She was my half-sister, the legitimate daughter born to my father and his true mate. She was beautiful, powerful, and blessed with a silver wolf so remarkable that grown males lost their composure around her. Angelia represented everything I had failed to become, and throughout our lives she had taken pleasure in reminding me of it. There you are. Her voice was sweet enough to disguise the poison underneath. She stood in the kitchen doorway wearing a gown that cost more than I would earn in an entire year. Her dark hair had been swept upward, deliberately exposing the unmarked mating gland at her neck. If the king noticed her, she clearly expected it would not remain unclaimed for long. Father wants you in the great hall. My hands stopped beneath the dishwater. Why? Her smile was both lovely and terrible. The king requested entertainment, something authentic from our territory. She studied her fingernails, each painted the dark red of fresh blood. Father decided you should sing for us. The elderly cook standing beside me drew in a sharp breath. Cold dread moved slowly down my spine. Angelia. It isn't a request. Catherine. She spoke my name as though it offended her tongue. Unless you'd rather have father explain to the Alpha King why his Dieter's daughter refused to direct command during a royal inspection. She did not need to say more. We both understood the danger. Refusing an order under those circumstances could be treated as insubordination. The punishment might be execution, but expulsion could be even worse. A barren, wolfless woman alone in the territories would not survive for a week. I need to change, I said, glancing down at the kitchen in a dress marked with grease and soap. There isn't time. Angelia's gaze moved over me with deliberate contempt. Besides, they asked for authenticity. We would not want anyone mistaking you for a real member of the pack. 20 minutes later, I stood at the edge of the great hall with my heartbeat pounding against my throat. The room was magnificent. Its vaulted ceiling had been painted with scenes from the history of our kind. Long tables groaned beneath platters of food. Power saturated the air. Wolves wore human bodies around me, but their animals pressed close beneath their skin, restless and barely restrained. Every glance and gesture was an evaluation, another silent adjustment in the hierarchy. At the head table sat Alpha King Charles Washington. I had seen portraits and heard countless descriptions, but none had prepared me for the man himself. He was not handsome in any gentle or conventional sense. His features were too severe, all sharp angles and hard shadows, as though his face had been carved from stone. His eyes were pale grey, the colour of a winter storm, and held no trace of mercy. Black hair, dark as a raven's wing, had been tied away from a face that appeared to have forgotten how to smile. Power clung to him as naturally as skin. Every wolf in the room angled toward him without realizing it, the way flowers turn towards sunlight. He was terrifying, and he was staring directly at me. "Ah, there she is," my father announced, forcing false warmth into his booming voice. "Your Majesty, allow me to present my daughter, Catherine. She possesses a certain talent for music." The king's expression remained unchanged. Our Alpha leaned forward with a conspiratorial smile. "We thought your Majesty might enjoy the lunar hymn. It is traditionally performed at mating ceremonies and coronations. A sacred piece." Someone snickered. The laughter travelled through the hall, and I understood exactly why they had chosen that song. The lunar hymn was sacred. Only mated females, lunars, and high-ranking jewels were permitted to perform it. It celebrated fertility, power, and the moon goddess's blessing upon a complete union. Asking an unmated, barren, wolfless woman to sing it was not entertainment. It was humiliation. They wanted me to make a mockery of myself for the king's amusement. I looked at my father. His eyes delivered a silent warning or obey, or be cast out. I looked at Angelia. Her smile shone with open cruelty. Then I looked at the king. His face revealed nothing. He simply waited. I would be honoured, your majesty, I whispered. What other answer did I have? The entire hall went quiet. Even the servants stopped moving. Someone lowered the lights to make the moment more theatrical, which only deepened the humiliation. I stood before them in a stained kitchen dress, loose strands falling from my braid and both hands shaking at my sides. Then I opened my mouth to sing the one song everyone believed I had no right to touch. What they did not know, what no one had ever cared enough to discover, was that I could truly sing. I did not merely hold a melody or hum pleasantly. My voice came from somewhere deeper than lessons or practice. It rose from every buried grief, every impossible longing, and every fragment of fierce hope I had pressed so far down inside myself that it had become something almost magical. So I sang the lunar hymn, and I shattered every expectation in that room. The first note escaped my throat like a bird finally breaking free of its cage. I could not perform the hymn as it was normally sung, with the proud, commanding strength of a Luna claiming her rightful place. That story did not belong to me. Instead, I sang the words as they existed inside my own heart, not as triumph, but as mourning, not as a declaration of possession, but as a love letter to everything I knew I would never have. I wrapped grief in melody. Moon Mother, hear your daughter's plea. Bless the bond that shall never cease. Let two souls become no longer alone, joined in spirit, flesh, blood, and bone. My voice began softly, fragile enough to break. Someone laughed, but the sound died the instant my song swelled. The music filled the enormous hall with a force no one expected from my small body. I had never received formal training. No teacher had shaped my voice. But for 23 years I had listened to the world with the fierce attention of someone forbidden to participate in it. I had learned every shade of emotion hidden inside a breath, every change in tone that revealed longing, shame, fear, or love. I had absorbed those sounds and taught myself how to return them. The lunar hymn was supposed to sound victorious. In my voice, it ached. Grant us courage through the night. Guard our children with Luna's light. May our devotion remain forever true. A sacred bond forever renewed. I closed my eyes because I could not bear to see their faces. I did not want to watch them remember that this performance was supposed to be funny. Instead, I surrendered myself to the cruel irony of singing about bonds I would never feel, children I would never carry, and love I believe I would never know. Then the atmosphere changed. The mockery disappeared. Every whisper stopped. The hall became so silent that I could hear my own heart and the faint sputter of candle flames in their sconces. I sang of the moon goddess blessing a mating bond, but I made it sound like the prayer of someone certain she would never be answered. I sang of love without end, and the melody became a farewell. Through the darkness, through the pain, Luna's children shall remain, blessed by moon and stars above, sealed forever, bound by love. The final note lingered in the air, bright and trembling. When I opened my eyes, everyone in the hall seemed frozen. Wolves who had been laughing moments before now stared at me in shock, and some looked almost grief-stricken. Tears ran freely down the faces of several mated women. Even my father appeared unsettled, as though he had arranged something he no longer understood and could not control. But the king frightened me most. Charles Washington had not moved or blinked. His hands gripped his metal wine goblet so tightly that its rim had begun to bend. His storm-grey eyes were locked on me with such intensity that my skin prickled and my breath caught. He looked like a man struck by lightning who had not yet decided whether to collapse or burn. The silence stretched until it became suffocating. Then he rose. The scrape of his chair against the stone floor sounded deafening. Every wolf immediately lowered their gaze in submission. Every wolf except me. I had never developed that instinct. There was no animal inside me to warn when a predator had become too dangerous to meet with my eyes. So I continued staring as he walked toward me. My father began to stand, likely intending to intervene, apologize, or explain that his defective daughter had not meant to offend him. Silence. The king's voice was quiet, low, and absolute. My father dropped back into his chair as if he had been struck. The king stopped 3 feet away from me. At that distance, his presence was almost unbearable. He was so tall that I had to tilt my head back, and broad enough to hide most of the hall behind him. He smelled of old forests, winter storms, and something darker that made every human instinct in me cry out that I was standing too close to danger. Who taught you to sing that way? His voice was rough, like a voice used only for commands. No one, Your Majesty. To my surprise, my answer sounded steady. I told myself, impossible. He did not sound angry. He sounded disturbed. Skill like that requires training. It requires having nothing else. The interruption escaped before I could stop it. Instantly, I wanted to tear out my own tongue. No one interrupted an Alpha King. No one contradicted him and expected to survive. Yet he did not kill me. He only watched me, his grey eyes searching my face as if he expected to find something hidden there. You are the beater's daughter, he said at last. It was not a question. Yes, Your Majesty, but you have never shifted. The room held its breath. This was the moment when I was expected to lower my gaze, apologize for my own existence, and make myself smaller. I had already spent my life becoming as small as possible. There was nowhere further to shrink. No, Your Majesty, I have no wolf. Something passed across his face too quickly for me to identify. And still you sang the lunar hymn as if you understood every word, as though you had lived it. I understand longing, Your Majesty. Again, the truth escaped before caution could silence it. I understand what it means to want something you know you can never possess. The hymn is not only about having everything, it is about continuing to hope for it anyway. A different kind of silence followed, charged and dangerous. Then the king turned toward my father. I am taking her. The hall erupted. My father leapt to his feet. Your Majesty, surely you cannot mean that. She is wolfless. She is... I am fully aware of what she is. The king's words cut through every protest. I am also aware that you presented your own daughter as a joke for my entertainment. His eyes turned colder than winter. I will take her as payment for the insult. Payment. All colour drained from my father's face. Your Majesty, please. I never intended. You intended to humiliate your daughter for my amusement. Instead, you revealed only your own cruelty. The king's voice softened, making it far more frightening. Be grateful I am not demanding a greater price. He looked back at me. You will come to the capital and serve in the royal household. It was an order, not an invitation. I should have been terrified. I should have begged my father to save me or thrown myself at the king's feet and pleaded for mercy. Instead, I felt a wild, unexpected relief. Even if I became the lowest servant in the capital, I would be leaving the pack house, where every corridor carried a memory of rejection. I would be leaving a father who regarded me as an error he could not repair. I would be leaving Angelia and her effortless, beautiful cruelty. When do we leave, Your Majesty? If my lack of protest surprised him, he gave no sign. At dawn, bring nothing. You will be provided for. Then he returned to his chair and lifted his wine, making it clear that the matter was finished. I left the great hall on legs that barely felt connected to my body. Behind me, my father tried to repair the political damage while our Alpha made excuses. Angelia drew in a sharp breath, perhaps furious that her joke had produced the opposite result from what she intended. I no longer cared. Back in my tiny room, I sat on the narrow bed and stared at the walls that had contained me for 23 years. I did not pack. The king had told me to bring nothing, but even without that order, I owned almost nothing worth taking. My books belonged to the pack library. My clothes were discarded hand-me-downs and kitchen uniforms. The only possessions truly mine were the handwritten fairy tales hidden beneath my mattress. I drew out pages and rested them on my lap. Years of impossible dreams had been pressed into ink and paper. Then I lit a fire in the hearth and fed the stories into the flames. I was leaving fairy tales behind. Whatever waited in the capital would be real, unknown, and probably terrible. But it would be different. Different was all I had ever wanted. Dawn arrived both too quickly and not quickly enough. I stood in the courtyard while the king's caravan prepared to depart. Massive horses stamped against the ground. Armed guards checked their weapons. Servants secured supplies to wagons. The entire pack gathered to bow, scrape, and swear loyalty as the king left. No one looked at me. I wore the same kitchen dress from the previous night, because it was the cleanest clothing I owned. My hair was braided down my back. I carried nothing. The king appeared dressed for travel in dark leather, armed with weapons that had clearly been used before. He barely acknowledged me before nodding toward the rear of the caravan. You will ride in the supply wagon. Not beside him. Not with the guards. With the supplies. I climbed into the wooden wagon bed and settled among crates of food and rolled tents. The boards were rough, hard, and splintered. The journey would be miserable. I smiled anyway. Catherine. I looked down to find my father beside the wagon. His expression had been carefully emptied of emotion. You will conduct yourself with honor. Do not embarrass this pack any further. He did not tell me to be safe. He did not ask me to write. He did not apologize. His only concern was that I not shame him again. Yes, father. He nodded once and walked away. Angelia took his place. For one uncertain moment, her expression softened enough that I wondered whether she might finally say something sincere, something a sister would say. "I hope you understand what you've done," she murmured. "The capital has no mercy for wolfless freaks. They will tear you apart before the week is over. Then perhaps I will finally share something with you," I answered pleasantly. "We will both know what it feels like to be destroyed by our own ambition." Rage flashed in her eyes, but the wagons had begun to move. I watched the pack house diminish behind us. The forests of my childhood became dark points along the horizon. I never looked back. The journey lasted 3 days. I spent them being thrown against crates in the supply wagon, eating dried meat and stale bread, and sleeping on rough burlap sacks. The guards ignored me. The king never came to check on me. It should have felt humiliating. Instead, it felt like freedom. For 3 days, no one demanded anything from me. No one watched with disgust or pity. No one reminded me of everything I lacked. I was simply nobody, and for the first time in my life, nobody was exactly who I wanted to be. On the 3rd evening, we reached the capital. I had never imagined anything like it. The city stretched across the valley, as if it were alive, filled with buildings of dark wood and pale stone. Lamplight glowed through crowded markets. At the center, rising above everything, stood the palace. It was breathtaking marble, glass, and tall towers that caught the sunset and scattered it in crimson and gold. Yet as we passed through the palace gates, I noticed something unsettling. The beauty seemed to end at ground level. Beneath the magnificent exterior, the lower structures disappeared into darkness. The wagon stopped in a courtyard. A severe woman in grey approached, her face sharp and unfriendly. "This is the wolfless one." One of the guards nodded. Her lip curled. "Follow me." My legs were stiff after 3 days of travel, but I climbed down and obeyed. She never offered her name. She led me through a side entrance, down a narrow staircase, and beneath a palace. The underground level was enormous, carved directly from the bedrock. Torchlit corridors spread in every direction. The air was damp and cold, carrying the smell of stone and something metallic. Blood, I realized. Old blood. You will work in the lower kitchens, the woman said. You will sleep in the servants' quarters. You will not speak unless someone addresses you. You will not go above ground without direct permission. Then her eyes fixed on mine. And you will never approach the king's private chambers. The warning in her voice was unmistakable. Yes, ma'am. Good. Someone will take you to your room. Your work begins at dawn. She swept away and left me standing alone. I waited for the person who was supposed to guide me, but no one arrived. The minutes passed while the torches flickered against the walls. Gradually, I realized I was being watched. Faces appeared in nearby doorways. They looked like servants, though some moved with an unnatural smoothness. Their expressions were not openly hostile, but neither were they welcoming. They studied me with wary curiosity, as though trying to determine what kind of creature I was. "You're the singer." The voice came from behind me. I turned and found a young woman, perhaps 20, with dark skin and even darker eyes. The one who made the king freeze. Apparently news travels quickly. "I'm Catherine. I know who you are." She stepped closer, examining me. "What I don't understand is why you're down here. The king doesn't bring guests into the lower levels. I'm not a guest. I'm a servant. Servants don't arrive with the king's personal caravan." Her gaze narrowed. "And servants are not placed under his direct protection. I don't have his protection." Then why did he summon the entire household this morning and announce that anyone who touched you would answer to him personally? My breath caught. "What?" She tilted her head. "So I will ask once more. Who are you really?" "I'm nobody," I whispered. "I'm only—" A scream cut through the underground. We both froze. It came again, raw with agony and barely human. The sound rose from somewhere deeper below the palace. The young woman seized my arm. "Never follow those sounds. Never ask what causes them. Do not even let yourself think about them. But someone is hurt. Someone is always hurt down here," she said grimly. "This is where the king keeps his monsters. She tried to pull me away, but I resisted." "What monsters?" Pity entered her expression. "You truly don't know, do you? You have no idea what the king is. He is an alpha. He is cursed," she hissed. "And you have just walked into his cage." Another scream echoed, closer than the last. Beneath it came a roar that made every hair on my body rise. It did not sound fully human, but it was not the voice of a wolf either. It belonged to something else. Something wrong. The young woman dragged me through another corridor and pushed me into a small room lined with several narrow cots. "Stay here. Do not leave before morning. And for the moon goddess's sake, do not let your curiosity get you killed." She closed the door. A lock clicked from the other side. Alone in the darkness, I listened to the screams travel through the stone. Only then did I understand. The king had not rescued me. He had brought me into a prison. Sleep was impossible. The sounds moved through the walls as though the stone itself were carrying them to me. Screams rose and then ended without warning. Roars shook the floor beneath my cot. Beneath everything came a steady, brutal pounding, the noise of something enormous hurling itself against a barrier again and again, testing whether its prison might finally give way. I sat with my knees drawn tightly against my chest and tried not to think about the young woman's warning. The king was cursed. But what did that truly mean? Alphas were extraordinarily powerful, yet they were still wolves, governed by the same instincts and limitations as the rest of their kind. Unless Charles Washington was no longer entirely one of them. Dawn eventually arrived. I recognized it not by sunlight, because none reached the room, but by the subtle change in the air. The screaming stopped. The roaring faded. What remained was an exhausted silence more frightening than the noise had been. The lock turned and the door opened. An older servant stood on the other side. His hair was grey, and his kind eyes carried the look of a man who had witnessed too much. "Come with me. You are assigned to the lower kitchens today. Stay close and do not speak to anyone." I followed him through the underground maze. With the torches burning brighter, I could see details hidden from me the previous night, deep claw marks gouged into stone, doors reinforced with thick iron, and heavy chains hanging unused from bolts in the ceiling. This place was not merely servants' housing. It was a dungeon. "What is this place?" I whispered. The old man kept his gaze ahead. "The king's sanctuary. It is where he keeps what cannot be permitted into the light." "What? People?" I said precisely what I meant. His tone remained gentle, but the firmness in it warned me not to press further. We entered the lower kitchens, an enormous chamber carved from solid rock. Great hearths filled it with heat. Preparation tables stretched across the room, and iron cauldrons large enough to bathe in hung above the fires. Servants moved through the chaos with practiced efficiency. No one looked at me directly, but I felt their attention like dozens of tiny needles against my skin. The old man's name, I soon learned, was Thomas. He assigned me simple work peeling vegetables, carrying water from deep wells, scrubbing blackened pots, and cleaning the floors. The labour was exhausting and repetitive. It was also safe. No one mocked me for having no wolf. No one whispered about my barren body. The hours blended together while my fingers grew raw and my back began to ache. There was an almost peaceful rhythm in doing work with clear expectations and no judgment. That peace ended when the whispers began. "He's asking for her already. But she has only been here one day. He specifically requested the singer." My hands went still beneath the washwater. Thomas appeared beside me, his expression grave. "The king wants to see you." My heart struck hard against my ribs. "Why?" "He does not explain his reasons to servants." Thomas handed me a cloth. "Dry your hands. Do not keep him waiting." He guided me through corridors I had not seen before. Instead of descending, we climbed. With every turn, the palace became brighter and more refined. Rough stone gave way to polished marble. Plain torches were replaced by crystal chandeliers. We were entering the royal palace above ground. As we climbed the final staircase, Thomas spoke quietly. "Whatever he asks you, answer truthfully. The king values honesty above nearly everything, even when the truth is unpleasant." "What does he want from me?" Thomas's face revealed nothing. "That is a matter between the two of you." We stopped before immense double doors made of black wood and carved with walls beneath crescent moons. Thomas knocked once, opened them, and gently urged me inside. The doors closed behind me with the final sound of a coffin lid. The chamber was magnificent. Tall windows reached from floor to ceiling, overlooking the Capitol and filling the room with warm afternoon light. Bookshelves covered nearly every wall, holding hundreds, perhaps the volumes. A massive desk stood in the centre beneath a disorder of papers, maps, and official documents. The king stood at the window with his back to me. He looked different from the man at the banquet. He wore simple dark trousers and a white shirt left open at the collar. His black hair hung loose around his shoulders. For a moment he seemed almost human. Then he turned. His storm grey eyes found mine, and the air seemed to bend around the force of his presence. "You may sit." He indicated a chair beside the desk. I accepted because my legs had become too weak to trust. He studied me in silence for several moments. "Do you know why I brought you to the capital? To serve in your household, your majesty?" "No." He crossed the room and leaned against the edge of his desk, folding his arms. "I brought you here because your voice accomplished something I believed impossible." I waited, unsure how to respond. "I have heard the lunar hymn hundreds of times," he continued. "Lunar queens have sung it. High priestesses and celebrated musicians have performed it. The result is always technically flawless and emotionally hollow. A polished performance with nothing alive beneath it. His gaze did not leave mine. You made the song real. I don't understand. You made me feel it. Rawness entered his voice. For the first time in years, I felt something other than anger or emptiness. You reminded me what it was like to desire something. The silence between us became delicate and dangerous. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you sing it that way?" I could have offered a graceful lie. I could have invented an answer designed to flatter him. But Thomas had warned me that the king valued truth. "Because I have nothing else," I said softly. "No wolf, no mate, no future. The only gift I possess is the ability to recognize beautiful things I will never have. When I sang about love, mating bonds, and divine blessings, I swallowed. I sang grief, because to someone like me, grief is what those words mean. The king became perfectly still. You truly believe you have no future? I know I don't, your majesty. I am wolfless and barren. In our world, that makes me worthless." His voice dropped until it was almost gentle, which somehow made it dangerous. "Is that what they told you? That your worth depends upon what you can breed, or which animal lies in your bones?" "It is not what they said." I held his gaze. "It is what they demonstrated every day for 23 years. He pushed away from the desk and came closer, moving slowly and deliberately rather than threateningly. "And despite that, you remain alive. You continued surviving. That requires another kind of strength, or stubbornness." One corner of his mouth moved, almost becoming a smile. Then his expression hardened with seriousness. "I want to offer you something, Catherine. Before you answer, you must understand exactly what accepting would mean." Dread tightened my stomach. "What kind of offer?" He returned to the windows and looked over the city. When he spoke again, every word was carefully controlled. "I am cursed. You have probably heard the servants whispering. They always do. What they do not know is the true nature of the curse or how it began." He turned back to me, and I saw something I had never expected from him. Vulnerability. I am not simply an Alpha King. I am divided, two halves trapped in a single body. During daylight, I have this human shape. I can think rationally, govern, make judgments, and control myself. His jaw tightened. When night comes, I become something else. A creature that reasons neither as a man nor as a wolf. It is hunger, fury, and chaos with almost no restraint. My breathing became shallow. "The screams you heard last night belonged to me," he said. "I was throwing myself against enchanted walls because the other half of me wanted to tear through this palace and destroy everything inside it. The underground chamber and the magic binding me there are the only reasons this kingdom remains safe after sunset. Terror should have driven me toward the door. Instead, I felt a strange and horrified compassion. Why are you telling me? Because I want you to remain here." His answer was immediate. "Not as a servant, as something else. A companion, perhaps. Someone who can speak with me while I am still myself. Someone who can—" He hesitated, and I realized the most powerful man in the kingdom could not easily find the words he needed. "Someone who can remind me that I am still human. I don't understand what you're asking me to do." He opened a drawer in the desk and withdrew a small velvet box. Inside lay a silver ring set with a pale moonstone that caught the light. "The curse has a condition," he explained. "I will remain divided until someone can love both parts of me, the king and the beast, not one instead of the other. Both." His eyes met mine. "I have tried for 5 years, Catherine. I courted noble women, invited scholars, and sought help from witches. No one has been able to see beyond the monster. The moment they witness what I become after dark, they either flee or lose themselves. So what do you want from me?" I want you to try. He placed the open box on the desk between us. Stay in the palace. Speak with me during the day, then remain with the beast at night. Survive its presence. Stay inside the chamber without running or screaming. For now, that is all I ask. And what do I receive in return? Safety, protection, a purpose beyond washing pots beneath the palace. He paused before adding more quietly, and the chance to matter to save someone, even if that person is me. The proposal was madness. Absolute madness. I could die, I said bluntly. You could kill me. The creature is contained by powerful magic. It cannot harm you unless you attempt to harm it first. The cage holds. Doubt entered his voice. Usually, I will not lie to you. There is danger. But danger exists in the servants' quarters, in pack territory, and almost everywhere else for a woman in your position. At least here, the danger would serve a purpose. I stared at the moonstone ring. He was not asking me to love him. Not yet. He wanted me to endure him. In return, my existence would have meaning, even if only a little. I have a condition, I heard myself say. His brows rose. You were negotiating with a king. You brought me here because I tell the truth. I met his eyes. So here is the truth. If I am expected to spend every night trapped beside a monster, I want something real in exchange. Not money, not protection. Something that belongs to me. What? Teach me. The answer surprised even me. During the day, while you are human, teach me history, politics, and everything beyond the narrow world of pack territory. Give me the education that was denied to me because I have no wolf. Let me use this library. I gestured toward the shelves. Give me the chance to become more than what they permitted me to be. The king examined me for a long time. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had seen on his face. Knowledge is your price. Knowledge is my price. He removed the ring from the box and turned it between his fingers. This is not a mating bond, he said. It is a promise ring, a visible sign of the agreement between us. If you wear it, every wolf in the palace will know that you stand under my direct protection. No one will touch you, insult you, or cause you harm without answering personally to me. And, in return, I stay beside you at night and try not to run. During the day, I teach you. He extended the ring toward me. Do we have an agreement? The moonstone shone silver-white like a fragment of captured starlight. The bargain was dangerous and irrational, yet, for the first time in my life, someone was offering me worth that did not depend on my fertility, bloodline, or the absence of a wolf. I held out my hand. He placed the ring on the fourth finger of my right hand, not the left, because this was not marriage. It was something unnamed. The silver was warm from his touch, and the ring fit as if it had been made for me. There is something else, he said, still holding my hand. Before your agreement becomes final, you must understand what you will truly face. Words cannot describe it. Then show me. His eyes darkened. You will regret asking. Show me anyway. He released my hand and stepped away. Very well. After sundown, Thomas will bring you to my night chamber. You will see the transformation. Then you will decide whether you can actually do this. I've already decided. No, he said gently. You decided while looking at my human face and thinking about a library. Wait until you know the truth. Then choose. The remaining hours passed in a blur. Thomas moved me into new quarters on an upper level, a private room with a real bed, and a window overlooking the gardens. It was greater luxury than I had ever known. Servants whispered as I walked by, their eyes repeatedly falling to the ring on my finger. I spent the afternoon in the library, trailing my fingers over leather-bound spines and breathing the scent of old paper and possibility. The king did not return. I learned that most afternoons were consumed by strategy meetings and the endless political work of holding a kingdom together while hiding the curse. The sun began to sink, staining the sky red and gold. Thomas appeared at the library entrance. "It is time." My stomach dropped. "Ready." Sunset arrives quickly in this season. His expression was compassionate but grave. "Remember, Catherine, the king is bound. The enchantments hold. You are not in immediate danger as long as you remain calm. You don't sound convinced." "I trust the magic," he answered carefully. "I am less certain that witnessing what he becomes will not break something inside you." He led me down through the palace, lower and lower, back into the underground. We passed the kitchens and the servants' quarters, then entered older passages I had never seen. The stone there was nearly black, covered with ancient symbols that hurt my eyes whenever I tried to look at them directly. At last we stopped before an extraordinary door made of black iron, reinforced with silver and covered in glowing runes that pulsed like living light. "Beyond this is the king's night chamber," Thomas explained. "Once you enter, the door seals until dawn. You cannot leave. Neither can he. Nothing that happens inside will be released until sunrise breaks the enchantment." My hand had begun to shake. I hid it behind my back. "There is a stool, water, and a blanket inside. Remain in the corner farthest from the cage. Do not approach the bars. Do not speak unless he speaks to you first, although he may not retain the ability to form words." Thomas's face became even more serious. "Whatever happens, do not show fear. Fear awakens the predator. Don't show fear while locked in a chamber with a monster," I repeated. "That should be simple." He almost smiled. "The king believes you are different. He believes you may survive this. I hope he is right. So do I." Thomas sighed. "Because he deserves peace. And perhaps the person most capable of giving it to him is someone who knows what it means to be treated like a monster." Before I could answer, the door opened. The chamber beyond measured at least 30 feet across. One half was bare stone. The other was occupied by a massive cage constructed from iron edged with silver, matching the enchanted door. The king waited inside. He was still human. He wore loose trousers and no shirt. His black hair had already become wild, and fever burned in his eyes. When he saw me, several emotions flashed across his face at once: relief, regret, and perhaps fear. "You came," he said, his voice rough. "I gave you my word. You can still leave. Thomas, take her back." "No!" I stepped fully into the room. The door swung shut behind me. Heavy locks engaged one after another. "I am staying." The king seized the bars. Beneath the skin of his hands, his bones had begun to move. His nails lengthened into claws. "It is starting." His words came through clenched teeth. "Catherine, listen carefully. Whatever I say or do, I will not be fully myself. The beast thinks differently. It understands that I desire something, but it may not understand what that desire is. It might try to—" A gasp tore through him. He doubled over. The transformation began. This was nothing like the shift of an ordinary wolf. There was no grace or natural rhythm in it. His spine arched at an impossible angle. Bones broke, stretched, and reformed. His skin rippled as though another creature were clawing its way outward. Then he screamed. The sound was neither human nor wolf. It was the voice of something trapped between both forms and suffering in each. I pressed my back against the far wall, my heart hammering, while the king disappeared and the beast emerged. Even hunched, it stood nearly 7 feet tall. Black fur covered its body and seemed to swallow the light around it. Its face resembled a wolf's, but the intelligence in it was wrong too sharp, too aware. Storm-grey eyes glowed from the darkness, feral with contained violence. Those eyes fixed directly on me. The beast circled its cage with smooth, predatory movements. Then it spoke. The fact that it possessed language terrified me more than a mindless roar would have. Little Songbird, it rumbled, its voice vibrating through my chest. "You stayed." I could not answer. Breathing alone required all my strength. It pressed against the bars. Silver burned its skin with an angry hiss, but the creature did not recoil. I can smell your fear. It tastes like honey and thunder. I'm not afraid, I lied in a whisper. The beast laughed, a terrible sound. Liar, but a courageous liar. It tilted its head and studied me. He wants you to love us. Both of us. As though anyone could love this. What do you want? I managed to ask. The beast became completely still. Then it lowered itself into a crouch before the bars, never taking its eyes from me. Tell me a riddle. Of every possible demand, that was not one I had imagined. What? A riddle, a puzzle, a question with no simple answer. Its eyes gleamed. If you want to survive until dawn, little songbird, give me something to think about besides how easily you could break. My thoughts raced. It wanted a riddle. Suddenly, I remembered the stories I had burned, the fairy tales in which clever girls survived impossible dangers through wit rather than physical strength. I drew a trembling breath. I am given, but I cannot be taken. I can be broken, though no hand can hold me. I bind two souls, yet I have no shape. What am I? The beast's eyes narrowed. It rose and began pacing, muscles shifting beneath its dark fur. Clever, it growled. You offer me a puzzle while you remain the puzzle I wish to solve. For nearly an hour it circled the cage, muttering possibilities and occasionally snarling in frustration. Yet it no longer tested the bars. It did not threaten me again. It was thinking. Slowly, almost impossibly, my terror began to loosen. This creature was undeniably monstrous, but it was also intelligent, curious, and perhaps more lonely than violent. I do not know the answer, the beast admitted at last, sounding irritated by its own failure. Tell me. No. The word came quietly but clearly. Ask me again tomorrow night. Perhaps I will answer then. Its eyes snapped toward mine. For a brief moment, something unmistakably human appeared there. Surprise. Then hope. Tomorrow, it agreed. Tomorrow, little songbird, you will bring another riddle. Perhaps. Definitely. It growled. Yet there was no threat in the word. It almost sounded playful. We passed the remaining hours in a strange, cautious truce. I stayed in my corner while the beast remained inside its cage, each of us observing the other. When dawn finally reached the high windows, the beast convulsed. Its body shrank and reformed, fur withdrew, bones shifted, and the monster slowly became a man again. The king collapsed naked on the floor of the cage, gasping for breath. I picked up the blanket Thomas had left and approached carefully. Your Majesty. He lifted his head. His human eyes widened in disbelief. You were still here. I gave my word. You survived. His voice sounded almost disoriented. How? A smile rose before I could stop it. I gave him a riddle. For the first time since I had met him, the king laughed. It was not bitter, formal, or controlled. It was a genuine sound filled with relief and astonishment. A riddle, he repeated. After 5 years of trying everything imaginable, the answer was a riddle. The enchanted door released its locks. Thomas rushed inside and stopped abruptly when he saw that both of us were alive and unharmed. I looked at the king. Same time tomorrow night. He stared at me as though I had accomplished a miracle. Same time tomorrow night, he agreed. I left the chamber with the promise ring still shining on my hand, and for the first time in years I carried something else with me. Purpose. After that first night, the palace seemed to change around me. Servants, who had once avoided meeting my eyes now offered respectful nods when I passed. Even the severe woman who had dismissed me upon my arrival gave me a thin smile. Thomas looked more relieved than anyone, as though he had been holding his breath for years, and had finally been permitted to release it. The moonstone ring marked me as more than a servant but not quite a lady. It gave me a place that had no proper title, a connection to the king unrelated to mating or marriage. What was I to him? A companion, an experiment, his final hope? Probably all three. Charles kept his promise. The morning after my first night with the beast, he came to begin my education. He found me in the library at dawn. I had gone there directly after leaving the underground chamber, far too alert to sleep. He appeared exhausted, with dark shadows beneath his eyes, but something in his expression had lightened. "You came here first," he asked from the doorway. "You didn't rest. You didn't need time to understand what you just survived." "I spent 23 years doing little more than waiting," I replied, running my fingers along a shelf of history books. "I would rather learn." He shook his head, though a smile almost appeared. "Very well. What do you want to know first?" "Everything. We began with history, the creation of the Pack territories, the rise of the Alpha Council, and the centuries of war and alliance that had formed the modern kingdom. Charles was an excellent teacher. He explained complex political matters with patience and clarity. More importantly, he listened. He never dismissed my questions as foolish or simple. He considered them seriously, sometimes pausing when my perspective forced him to re-examine his own assumptions. "You think differently," he observed after I challenged one traditional interpretation of a past conflict. "Not like someone shaped by formal education. You notice angles other scholars overlook." "That is because no one ever taught me what I was supposed to think," I said. "I had to understand everything for myself. That may make you more useful than every trained scholar in my court." The compliment settled warmly inside my chest. We continued until early afternoon. Eventually, royal duties pulled him away meetings with advisors, judgments to deliver, and a kingdom to govern. Before leaving, he gave me a stack of books and promised to return. I consumed them eagerly. History led me to philosophy. Philosophy led to poetry. I read accounts of the moon goddess and her blessings, studies of magic older than Pack lore, and treatises on the nature and price of curses. That final subject held my attention. I was buried in a volume about magical bindings when Thomas brought my lunch. "You will damage your eyes reading in this light," he warned gently, placing the tray beside me. "Then I will continue in the dark." I did not look up. "Thomas, this text discusses the breaking of curses. It says most curses must contain an escape condition. Without one, the magic becomes unstable. That is the theory. So the requirement in the king's curse that someone love both forms is not simply designed to torment him. It is a real path to freedom. Whoever cast the curse believed the condition could be fulfilled." Thomas lowered himself into the chair opposite me. "You are trying to break it." "I am trying to understand it." I finally raised my head. "The king said he has tried for 5 years. What exactly did he do?" Thomas released a weary breath. "Everything he could imagine. He courted noble women, hoping one might see beneath the crown and recognize the man. He summoned healers, seers, and experts in ancient magic. He hesitated. He even attempted to force a condition. How? He commanded a noble woman to remain through several transformations. He believed that if she stayed near the beast long enough, familiarity might become acceptance. What happened to her? She lost her mind within a week. She screamed that monsters lived inside the walls and that the king intended to devour her. We sent her home with enough gold to ensure her family never spoke publicly about it. Old guilt weighed down Thomas's expression. After that, the king stopped trying. He said he would not destroy another person simply because he was desperate to save himself. I remembered what the beast had said. As if anyone could love this. "He no longer believes the curse can be broken," I said. "Can you blame him? You survived one night, Catherine, and I am deeply grateful. But surviving a monster and loving one are very different things. Perhaps." I turned back to the book. Or perhaps everyone has been approaching the problem incorrectly. That evening, with sunset colouring the sky amber and wine red, I returned to the underground chamber. This time, I carried a leather journal and a writing tool borrowed from the library. Charles was already waiting inside the cage. He remained human, though tension ran through every muscle as he prepared for the coming change. His eyes fixed on the journal. What is that? The notes. I settled into my corner and arranged the blanket around me. If I'm going to spend every night here, I want to observe patterns. I need to know whether the beast changes, what it remembers, and whether anything affects its behaviour. You are treating my curse like a research project. You are treating it like an inevitable tragedy. At least one of us should attempt something new. He laughed again, a real sound that seemed more natural each time I heard it. Fair enough. The last edge of the sun vanished, and his transformation began. I watched more closely than before. His spine changed first, then his limbs, then his skull. His screams still twisted my stomach, but I forced myself to observe rather than surrender to horror. When the beast finally emerged, its burning grey eyes searched for me immediately. The songbird returns. It rumbled. Are you brave or foolish? Both. I opened the journal. Do you remember the previous night? The beast cocked its head. I remember a riddle, an impossible question, and a girl who refused to run. Good. Memory transfers between your forms. That matters. I wrote it down. The beast came closer to the bars, watching with fascination. You are recording observations about me. About you, the king, the curse, and whatever separates the two of you. Nothing separates us. It growled. We are one soul divided into two expressions. He is the part that thinks and rules. I'm the part that feels and hungers. My head lifted sharply. You feel everything. I feel his loneliness, his shame, and his desperate hope that you may be different. I feel all of it, but I cannot shape emotion into careful words as he does. Inside me, it only burns. This was new information. Important information. The king believes you are the monstrous part, I said cautiously. The violence and fury he must contain. That is what he tells himself. The beast lowered into a crouch. But he is wrong. I am not merely his anger. I am his truth. Every feeling he refuses to acknowledge during daylight emerges through me at night. Then what does he feel about me? The beast's eyes brightened. A dangerous question, little songbird. I am asking it anyway. It studied me for a long moment. Hope, fear, fascination, guilt. It tilted its head. And something else that frightens him more than I do. What? Ask him yourself. The beast turned aside. Now give me my riddle. I had prepared one. I am always approaching, yet I never arrive. I can be measured, but no one can hold me. Kings fear me, while children pay me no attention. What am I? The beast began to pace, muttering possibilities under its breath. I watched intelligence shine behind its feral features. After an hour, it still had not found the answer, but there was none of the previous night's frustration. It was engaged, almost joyful. You are clever, it said at last. You use riddles to occupy my thoughts, so I cannot spend the night imagining how fragile you are. Is it working? Perfectly. The creature settled onto the floor but continued watching me. Tell me, songbird, why are you not afraid of me? I never said I wasn't. You fear me less than you did yesterday. Why? I considered my answer. Because you have not harmed me. Because you are choosing thought instead of fury. I paused. And because I have spent my entire life being regarded as a monster too. A different kind of monster, but one all the same. The beast went still. They called you a monster. Not with that exact word. They called me defective, broken, And wrong. I held its glowing gaze. At least you have an explanation. You were cursed. I was simply born this way. You are not broken. The fierceness in its voice felt strangely protective. You were perfect exactly as you are. The word struck me harder than a physical blow. No one had ever spoken to me that way. No one had ever suggested such a possibility. The king believes it too, the beast continued. He is terrified to admit it because every woman he allowed himself to hope for eventually fled or shattered. When you sang the lunar hymn as grief instead of triumph, he recognized himself in you. Someone beautiful, alone, and convinced she would never be enough. My throat tightened. Stop. Why? Because it is true. Because this was not part of our agreement, I managed. You were supposed to be the monster I endured. You were not supposed to understand me. The beast moved closer to the bars. Too late, Songbird. I already do. We stared at one another through the silver cage. The moment stretched with a feeling I could not name. I opened my journal and forced the conversation elsewhere. Tell me about the curse. How was it cast? What do you remember? The beast remained silent so long that I began to think it would refuse. Finally, it answered. A witch cast it. A powerful one. Its speech slowed as it searched the shared memories. The king ordered the execution of her daughter. The girl had practiced forbidden magic and caused the deaths of 3 people. The law demanded punishment, but the witch did not care about law or justice. It continued bitterly. She wanted vengeance. She cursed him to become the thing he feared most, a monster separated from his own humanity, imprisoned within his skin. She said he would remain divided until someone loved both halves. Someone who could look upon the king and the beast and desire them both. That is not impossible, I said. Only difficult. It is impossible because everyone who sees me runs or breaks. The creature shook its head. 5 years. 5 years of failure. You are the first person who has endured more than 3 nights. How many nights are required before the curse ends? No one knows. The witch never gave a number. It laughed, sharp and joyless. It might take a week. It might take a year. It may never happen if you decide you cannot tolerate this. I am not leaving. You believe that now. I am not leaving, I repeated firmly. I gave my word. Then I hesitated. And I am curious. I want to know whether someone truly can come to love both halves. The beast's eyes widened. You are experimenting on us. We are experimenting on one another, I corrected. You need someone who refuses to run. I need the chance to matter. The arrangement benefits us both. You are risking your life. I have been dying slowly my entire life. At least this is interesting. The sound it made might have been laughter or despair. You are insane. Probably. I smiled. Now, are you going to solve the riddle, or do you require a hint? We spent the remaining hours with me asking questions, writing observations, and occasionally tormenting the beast with partial clues. It paced and thought, growing visibly calmer as the night passed. At dawn, its body transformed back into Charles. He collapsed as before. When I approached with the blanket, he reached through the bars and gently caught my wrist. "Catherine," he said hoarsely. "Whatever the beast said about you remains between him and me," I interrupted. "You are not responsible for every emotion he expresses. But I am. We all are the same person. Are you?" I tilted my head. From where I stand, you are 2 very different expressions trapped in one body. He is more honest. You are more cautious. He experiences everything, while you analyze everything. Those are not the same. Charles stared at me, vulnerable surprise open on his face. You are defending him, the monster. I am observing him without prejudice. There is a difference. No one has ever. He stopped and swallowed. No one has ever treated him as though he were a person, something worth understanding rather than merely surviving. Then everyone before me was an idiot. I gently freed my wrist. Now get dressed. Today promised to teach me economics. His laugh was unsteady but genuine. You survived an entire night with a beast, and now you want to discuss grain taxes. I contain many complexities, I replied primly. From then on, our days developed a rhythm. Mornings belonged to the king and my lessons. We studied history, philosophy, politics, and military strategy. He taught me how to read maps, examine trade routes, and understand the network of alliances and grudges that held the kingdom together. But we learned more than official subjects. We truly talked about our childhoods. His had been lonely, burdened by expectations no child could reasonably bear. Mine had been defined by isolation and rejection. We spoke about our fears and the small moments that had once brought us joy. When I was a boy, I used to sneak into the kitchens, Charles confessed one afternoon. I wanted to watch the servants laugh and speak freely together. They seemed so comfortable, as though they belonged somewhere without having to earn it. I used to write stories, I admitted, fairy tales in which broken people were rescued and love could repair everything. Do you still believe that? That love can fix what is broken? No, I answered honestly. But I believe it can make broken things easier to carry. He considered that for a long time. Then I think you may be right. During the afternoons, I read relentlessly, filling every empty space in my education. The library became my sanctuary, and its books became companions. Every evening, I returned underground. Night after night, the beast waited for me. It remembered my presence and began to anticipate it. Soon it prepared riddles of its own because, to my surprise, it wanted to test me in return. I contain cities without houses, forests without trees, and water without fish. What am I? It asked on our fourth night. A map. Too easy, it complained, though its satisfaction was obvious. Try another. I speak without a mouth and listen without ears. I have no body, yet wind gives me life. What am I? I thought for several minutes. An echo. Clever songbird. Its approval filled the chamber. You are learning, it said. So are you. You speak more each night. Your sentences are becoming more complex. You give me subjects beyond rage and hunger. It settled on the floor of the cage, watching me. The king wonders whether you are curing him. I know better. What do you know? You are not curing us. You are teaching us that perhaps we were never as broken as we believed. The thought entered me deeply. The beast was right. I had not repaired Charles. I had simply remained present, accepting both expressions of him without trying to erase either. Perhaps acceptance itself could be enough. On the seventh night, something changed. After the transformation, the beast did not come directly toward me. It looked down at its claws and flexed them as though seeing them for the first time. I remember something, it said quietly. What? The witch. I remember her exact words after she completed the curse. I seized my journal. Tell me. The beast recited them slowly. You shall remain divided until someone sees you whole. Not only the king, not only the beast. Someone must witness the truth of both at once, look upon both halves, and choose to remain. Only then will you be free. I wrote every word, my mind racing. But no one can see both forms at once. The beast appears only at night. During daylight, you are hidden inside him. Exactly. Bitterness sharpened its voice. The curse requires someone to love what cannot be seen. How can anyone accept what they cannot perceive? An idea began to form. What if the words are not literal? Perhaps it does not require both bodies to be visible simultaneously. Perhaps it means someone must fully understand that both halves exist and accept them equally. I leaned forward. That person would need to know the beast and still choose the king, then know the king and still accept the beast. They could not prefer one or merely tolerate the other. They would have to want both. The creature became utterly still. You are describing yourself. I am explaining a theory. My heart had begun pounding. You spend your days with him and your nights with me, the beast said, its voice dropping. You know both halves. You continue choosing both. Then why has the curse not broken? Knowing someone and loving them are not the same. Are they so different? It approached the bars. Answer honestly, Songbird. Do you care for us? That isn't fair. Answer anyway. I met its burning eyes. Yes, I care for both of you. You are both fascinating, infuriating, and lonelier than anyone should ever have to be. I stopped, uncertain whether I could speak the rest. And it prompted. I look forward to seeing you, both of you, every day and every night. The admission made my chest tighten. This impossible arrangement has become the best part of my life. So yes, I care. Caring and loving are closer than you think. We stared at one another while something profound and frightening settled between us. Tomorrow night, the beast says at last, I will tell you the answer to the first riddle, the one about something given but never taken. You solved it. I always knew the answer. Its voice became unexpectedly gentle. I was waiting until you were prepared to hear it. Dawn arrived too quickly. When Charles returned to human form, he looked at me with an expression I could not interpret. The beast told you the witch's exact words. It was not a question. Yes, and you are still here. Where else would I be? He crossed the chamber and stopped only inches away. I could see silver moving through the grey of his eyes and feel warmth radiating from his skin. Catherine, he said softly, I need to tell you something I should have admitted days ago. What? I am falling in love with you. The confession was raw and unprotected. I know that was never part of our arrangement. You asked for knowledge, and I asked for survival. But somewhere between the riddles and the history lessons, I stopped seeing you as an experiment. He swallowed. Now I cannot imagine this palace without you. My breath caught. Your Majesty. Charles, he interrupted. When we are alone, call me Charles. Charles, I repeated, testing how his name felt in my voice. I don't know what to say. Tell me you will remain, even if the curse never breaks, even if this divided existence is all I will ever have. Stay anyway. I looked at the powerful, wounded king who had offered me education, purpose, and something perilously close to belonging. I'll stay, I whispered. His face opened into a true smile filled with joy, relief, and wonder. Something cracked open inside my chest in answer. It felt terrifyingly like hope. I did not sleep after Charles's confession. How could I, with his words circling endlessly through my mind? I am falling in love with you. Moonlight spilled silver across the floor while I paced my room and tried to understand my own heart. I attempted to separate gratitude from affection and affection from something more dangerous. The truth was that I had been falling too. Perhaps it began in the banquet hall when he defended me against my own family. Perhaps it began the first morning he listened to my questions as though each one mattered. Or perhaps it began when the beast called me Songbird and treated my mind as something valuable. But love required belief in the very things I had abandoned of fairy tales, happy endings, and the possibility that broken souls might one day become whole. I had burned those stories before leaving the pack house. Hadn't I? Dawn arrived pale and grey. I dressed in one of the simple gowns Charles had provided. It was not elaborate, but it was clean, well made, and truly mine. The moonstone on my finger caught the morning light. A promise ring, he had called it. Perhaps it was time to understand what kind of promise we had actually made. I found Charles in his study, already bent over royal correspondence despite having slept for no more than 3 hours. When I entered, vulnerability crossed his face. "Catherine, I wasn't certain you would come. Where else would I go?" I took the chair opposite his desk, a chair that had become mine after 2 weeks of lessons. "We have not finished discussing the southern trade dispute. I still need to understand how the grain embargo affects the mountain packs." He stared at me. "I told you I was in love with you, and you want to discuss economics." "I want to know whether you meant it," I replied steadily, "or whether exhaustion and the transformation were speaking for you." "I meant every word." His answer was quiet but certain. "I know it happened quickly. I know it may be foolish. But you gave me something I thought had disappeared forever. You offered companionship without judgment. With you, I am not only a king or only a beast. I am simply myself. Which self? The man at this desk or the creature in the cage? Both." He leaned forward. "That is what you helped me understand. They are not separate people. Both are me. The beast is not an evil presence that must be destroyed. It carries every emotion I silence during the day: loneliness, longing, and the fear that I am too damaged to deserve love. You were not damaged. I am cursed, Catherine. My soul was divided. That is nearly the definition of being broken." He smiled sadly. "But beside you, brokenness no longer feels like a sentence of death. It feels like something I can live with." I wanted to reach across the desk and take his hand, but a final barrier inside me refused to fall. Instead, I changed the subject. "Tell me about the witch who cast the curse. You said she was powerful. What was her name?" Charles recognized the deflection. Still, he allowed it. "Morgana Wilson. She was one of the last true witches before the Alpha Council banished her kind from our territories. The Council outlawed witches. They feared them. A witch's magic does not come from wolf nature. It rises from older powers, the moon goddess, the earth, the elements, and forces the Council could neither control nor understand. Anything the Alphas could not dominate was declared dangerous. So they drove the witches away, and killed those who resisted," he said heavily, "including Morgana's daughter. What happened? The girl was 17. Her brother was dying, and she used forbidden magic to save him. The spell preserved his life by taking life from others. 3 people died so that one could survive. Under pack law, the punishment was execution. And you ordered it. I was 19 and had only recently inherited the crown after my father's death. The Council was testing me. They wanted to know whether I would appear weak or offer mercy they could exploit." Charles rubbed both hands over his tired face. "So I did what everyone expected. I signed the order. Morgana watched her daughter die and promised that I would learn what it meant to be torn away from someone I loved. The shape of the curse became clearer. She did not simply make you a monster," I said. "She separated you from yourself. She forced you to experience what it meant to have part of your soul taken away and remain incomplete, unless I found someone willing to love both halves." He gave a bitter laugh. "A fitting punishment. You killed her daughter." "I did." "She took your humanity, but she also left you an escape." I leaned closer. "A curse with a condition implies that she believed redemption was possible, even while consumed by grief. Or she believed knowing that freedom existed just beyond reach would increase my suffering." We sat in silence while the weight of the old tragedy settled between us. "What became of Morgana?" I asked. "She disappeared. The Council sent hunters after her, but she vanished into the wild territories. Some claim she died. Others believe she is still alive, watching from a distance to see whether the curse remains." Charles looked at me. "Why do you ask?" "Because if she lives, she can end this. Not love, not time, not another spell. She created the curse. She can remove it. We searched for her. We sent messengers, offered wealth, begged, threatened, and negotiated. Either she is dead, or she has no interest in showing mercy. or she is waiting for the condition to be fulfilled honestly, I said slowly. If you attempt to bypass the curse, it may become permanent. Charles went still. Where did you learn that? From the books on magical theory in your library. Most curses protect themselves against disaction. If Morgana is alive and observing you, she would recognize any forced solution. I leaned forward. Whatever happens between us must be real, Charles. If it isn't genuine, the magic will know. And is it? His voice roughened. Are your feelings real, Catherine? Or are you trying to save me because you need a purpose? The question cut deeply. I opened my mouth, intending to offer a careful answer, but no safe words came. Did I care for Charles because of who he was, or because he had assigned value to me when no one else had? Did I look forward to nights with the beast because I truly cared, or because solving the curse challenged my mind? Were we falling in love, or were two lonely, wounded people simply holding one another in the dark? I don't know, I admitted. I care about both of you. I wait for our days and nights together. I am happier here than I have ever been. I shook my head. But love, I don't trust myself to recognize it. Every emotion in my life has been tangled with desperation and survival. Charles did not look wounded. Instead, he smiled. Thank you. For what? For telling the truth. For refusing to claim a feeling you were not certain you possess merely to make this easier for me. He stood and walked to the window. I would rather have your uncertain honesty than a comforting lie. I joined him and looked over the city. What if I never become certain? What if I care but it is never enough to break the curse? Then we continue as we are. He turned toward me. Even if I remain divided forever, these weeks with you have already been worth the risk. You restored something I believed I had lost. What? The ability to hope. That isn't enough. It is more than I had before. We stood close enough to touch, yet neither of us moved, suspended between possibility and fear. Tonight, I said finally, the beast promised to reveal the answer to our first riddle. The one about something given but never taken. Yes, I know the answer, Charles said. You too? We share one soul. What he knows, I know. He hesitated. Are you prepared to hear it? I asked the question. I should be prepared for the answer, but my heart raced because his expression warned me that the answer would change everything. That evening, I descended to the underground chamber carrying equal measures of anticipation and dread. The beast had already transformed. It paced the cage with unusual restlessness. Songbird, it rumbled when I entered. You came. I always come. Tonight is different. It lowered itself to the floor and regarded me with fierce intensity. Tonight I give you the answer, and you decide what the answer means. I sat in my usual corner. For once, I forgot to open my journal. I'm listening. The beast repeated the riddle. I am given but cannot be taken. I may be broken, though no one can hold me. I bind two souls without possessing a shape. What am I? Its voice had become soft, nearly gentle. Tell me. A promise. The word remained between us, heavy with meaning. A promise, I repeated, offered freely, broken by choice, and capable of binding without chains. The king placed a promise ring on your hand, the beast said. He claimed it represented protection and education in exchange for your presence, but that was not its deepest meaning. My throat tightened. Then, what did it mean? He promised to see you, to value you, to give you the one thing everyone had denied you, the knowledge that your existence matters. Its eyes glowed more brightly. In return, he promised to remain, to witness all of him, both halves, without fleeing or passing judgment. That was an agreement. No, Songbird. It was a promise, and promises are among the oldest forms of magic. The beast moved closer. When I asked the riddle on the first night, I was truly asking whether you understood what you were entering. Did you know what it meant to offer yourself to someone like us? I never offered myself. You did. Certainty filled its voice. The moment you accepted the ring, the first night you returned, and every night after that. A promise does not always require spoken words. It requires choice, repeated until choice becomes truth. I looked at the moonstone on my finger and saw it differently. It was more than protection. It represented a vow I had renewed each day without fully understanding it. "I'm afraid," I whispered. "Of us, of myself, of this, of wanting something so deeply, believing it might be real, and discovering that it was merely another fantasy I created to survive." The beast remained quiet for a long time. Then it asked, "Do you want to know what I truly am? Catherine, you are the beast, the cursed half. I am his heart." The answer interrupted me. "I contain everything he feels but refuses to reveal. Every soft emotion, every desperate longing, every moment of vulnerability. He calls me a monster, but I am not merely violence and rage." Its voice deepened. "I'm love with nowhere to go." My breath caught. "So when I tell you that we love you, I am not speaking on his behalf. I am not separate from him. I am the part that feels without the armor of logic or reason." It pressed as near to the bars as the enchantment allowed. "He loves you with his mind. I love you with everything else. Together we love you wholly." Tears began streaming down my face. "How can you love me? I am nobody. I am nothing. You are everything," the beast growled. "You are brave, intelligent, and kind to monsters. When you see something broken, you do not demand that it be repaired. You simply sit beside it in the darkness and make the darkness less lonely." Its gaze held me. "You turned grief into beauty when you sang. You transformed survival into purpose. You looked upon us cursed, divided, damaged, and chose to remain, because I had nowhere else to go. Liar." The word sounded gentle. "You could have refused the king. You could have begged your father to reclaim you. You could have fled to another territory or found 100 different ways to escape. You remained not because you were trapped, but because you wanted to stay." The truth struck me with brutal force. I had repeatedly told myself this was merely survival. I claimed I was making the best of terrible circumstances and that my attachment was nothing more than gratitude mixed with loneliness. But I had been hiding behind those explanations. The truth was simpler and far more frightening. I had fallen in love with the cursed king and the beast that carried his heart. I loved the patience with which Charles explained complicated politics. I loved the way he listened as though my thoughts mattered. I loved his rare smiles, his exhausted eyes, and his determination to remain a good ruler despite believing himself broken. I also loved the beast's honesty, its riddles, its fierce protectiveness, and the way it spoke beautiful truths without hesitation or shame. I loved both halves. "Oh," I breathed. The beast's eyes gleamed. "You understand now. The curse. Its condition." My heart pounded. Someone must love both halves. Someone must see all of you and still choose you. "And do you," I asked quietly, "do you see us whole, Catherine? Do you choose us?" This was the moment beyond which nothing could return to the way it had been. I could lie. I could ask for more time, more certainty, or proof that my feelings were real. Or I could be brave enough to speak the truth. I rose and crossed the chamber until I stood directly before the cage. Heat radiated from the beast's dark fur. My own reflection appeared in its burning eyes. "I see you," I said clearly. "Both of you. King and beast. Thought and emotion. Mind and heart." My voice began to break. "I see the loneliness and the hope, the fear and the courage, the curse and the man within it." The beast waited without moving. "I love you," I whispered. "Both of you. All of you. The confession poured free. I never intended to. I did not plan for this. But somewhere between the riddles and the history lessons, between your patience and our promises, I fell in love with a soul divided in two. I placed my hand against the bars. And I do not want you made whole if becoming whole requires either part to disappear. I want all of you exactly as you are. Absolute silence filled the room. Then the beast spoke, and its voice trembled. Say it again. I love you. I choose you. Both of you. Always. White light exploded through the chamber. It poured from the beast's body like sunrise ripping through storm clouds. I threw up my arm to shield my eyes and stumbled backward. The magic that had endured for 5 years shattered with the sound of breaking glass. The beast roared not in agony, but in release. Its body began to change. This transformation carried no cracking bones, no screams, and no suffering. There was only brilliant light, movement, and the unmistakable sound of chains breaking. When the radiance finally faded, I lowered my arm. Charles stood amid the ruins of the cage. He was not the exhausted man who normally returned at dawn. He was not the separated beast of the night. He was simply Charles Human, whole and free. His grey eyes widened in disbelief. He looked down at his hands and flexed fingers that should have ended in claws. He touched his face and chest as if confirming that he was real and singular. The curse, he breathed. It's broken. The curse is broken, I repeated, hardly trusting the words. He crossed the chamber in 3 strides. His hands framed my face and tilted it toward him. You love me. I love every part of you. Both halves. All of it. Then he kissed me. It was desperate and deep, the kiss of a drowning man who had suddenly found air. His lips were soft but urgent, and his hands shook against my face. I kissed him back with everything inside me. When we finally separated, both of us breathless, he pressed his forehead against mine. I am whole, he whispered in wonder. For the first time in 5 years, I am whole. I can still feel the beast's emotions, but they are no longer separated from me. They are integrated, part of one soul. He swallowed. I finally feel complete. What does it feel like? Like waking from a nightmare. Like coming home. He pulled back enough to look at me. Like finding the part of myself I never understood was missing. I smiled through my tears. That may be the worst poetry I have ever heard. He laughed with pure joy. Give me time. My romantic skills have been neglected for 5 years. You have time, I promised. All the time in the world. We stood together among the shattered remains of his prison as dawn began to filter through the high windows. The enchantment was gone. The curse had ended. For the first time in either of our lives, neither of us was alone. News spread through the palace like fire. Servants cried with relief. Advisers celebrated. Messengers were dispatched to the Pax, the Alpha Council, and every corner of the kingdom. The Alpha King had become whole again. Charles barely noticed the commotion. He continued looking at me as though I had placed the moon in the sky. Marry me, he said that afternoon in the library where we had spent so many mornings. I blinked. What? Marry me. Not because of the curse, the ring, or our original arrangement. He took both my hands. Marry me because I love you. Because you see all of me, and I see all of you. Because you are brave, brilliant, and the only person who ever looked at my broken pieces and called them beautiful. I still have no wolf, I said quietly. I am still barren. I cannot give you an heir or strengthen your bloodline. I do not care. Fierce conviction filled his voice. You returned my soul to me, Catherine. That is worth more than 1,000 heirs. If we desire children, we will find another way: adoption, guardianship, whatever we choose. He squeezed my hands. I do not want you for your womb or a wolf. I want your mind, your heart, and your infuriating habit of asking questions that force me to reconsider everything I believed. I stared at the king who had once become a beast and who had taught me that my value was greater than everything I lacked. "Yes," I whispered, "I will marry you." His smile became radiant. He pulled me into his arms, turned once in pure excitement, and kissed me thoroughly. "Your Majesty—" Thomas appeared in the doorway and immediately stopped. Oh, should I return later? Charles did not release me. No, you should hear this before anyone else. You remained beside me through everything. Thomas entered cautiously. "Hear what? Your Majesty. I am getting married. Catherine has agreed to become my lunar queen." Shock transformed Thomas's face, followed by joy and then tears. "Your Majesty. Miss Catherine, I—" His voice failed. "I am so deeply happy for you both. You will stand beside me during the ceremony," Charles declared. "You and the few others who never abandoned hope. It would be my honor." Thomas bowed deeply, then lifted his head with a sly smile. "Shall I inform the Alpha Council that their king has chosen a Luna?" "Inform them," Charles replied, "and tell them any objection to my choice will be considered treason." I elbowed him. "You cannot threaten the entire council. I am the king. I can do whatever I want. You are impossible. And you love me anyway." He kissed my temple. A perfect match. That night marked the first time in 5 years that Charles did not descend into the underground prison. We stood together on a palace balcony, overlooking the lights of the capital. "What happens now?" I asked, leaning into his warmth. "Now we prepare a wedding. We learn to govern together." He wrapped his arms around me. "Now we live. Just like that. Just like that." He paused. "Though there is something you should know." Dread touched my spine. "What?" "The beast is still here. He is no longer separate, but his thoughts and feelings remain inside me, integrated with my own. It is like recovering every emotion after years of numbness." He turned me in his arms. "Does that trouble you? A part of me will always be wild, not entirely human." I held his face between my hands. "Charles, I fell in love with the beast too. I never wanted you to lose him. I want every part of you." His grey eyes gleamed, and for a fleeting instant, gold flickered within them. "The beast recognizes you," he murmured. "He says thank you. And he says you are still his songbird." I smiled. "Always." We remained beneath the stars, free, whole, and together. Far away in the wild territories, inside a cottage hidden by ancient enchantment, a grief-worn witch felt her curse collapse. Morgana Wilson stood before her window and looked in the direction of the distant palace. Tears came, not from fury this time, but from release. Her daughter was still gone, and that wound would never completely heal. Yet the young king had suffered, learned, and finally understood the agony of being separated from oneself. More importantly, he had found someone capable of loving him through it. Redemption, Morgana whispered into the night. Perhaps it truly exists. She passed one hand over the scrying bowl on her table. Its surface darkened. The curse had fulfilled its purpose. Her part in the story, she believed, was finished. Perhaps that was enough. The 3 weeks after the curse broke passed in the storm of activity. Wedding preparations consumed the palace. Seamstresses surrounded me with pins and ribbons, measuring me for gowns I had never imagined touching, much less wearing. Advisors argued endlessly about guests, royal customs, seating arrangements, and ceremonial protocol. Servants transformed the great hall until it resembled a scene from one of the fairy tales I had once written. Sometimes I felt as though I had stepped directly into those old stories of the rejected girl rescued by love, raised to a throne, and handed the happy ending she had never dared expect. Real life, however, was far more complicated than a fairy tale. The Alpha Council had strong opinions about Charles's decision. "She has no wolf, Your Majesty," Councilman Aldrich said during the first formal meeting after our engagement was announced. He was an aging alpha with silver hair and sharp eyes, ruler of one of the most influential territories. No disrespect toward Miss Catherine, but tradition requires. Tradition would have left me cursed forever, Charles interrupted coldly. Catherine ended a 5-year curse through courage and genuine love. That makes her more qualified than any noble woman you might offer. But the royal bloodline must remain secure. Charles's voice lowered to a dangerous softness. Are you questioning the judgment of your king? Aldrich possessed enough sense to retreat. Of course not, your majesty. My only concern is... What you want, another voice cut in, is the authority to decide whom the king is permitted to choose as his mate. Until then, I have remained quietly, in one corner. Charles had invited me to observe the council so I could learn the political terrain I would soon have to navigate. Every head turned toward Councilwoman Thera, leader of the Northern Territories. She was younger than Aldrich, dark-skinned, sharply featured, and known throughout the kingdom for ruthless honesty. The truth, Thera continued as she rose, is that many of you fear Catherine because she is not one of us. She brings no prearranged pack alliance and owes no political debt. Her loyalty rests with the king, which means none of you can manipulate her. Through family obligations. She gave Aldrich a cold smile. And that terrifies you. That is not. Isn't it? Thera's gaze swept across the chamber. For 5 years, our king suffered under a curse. How many of you volunteered your daughters, sisters, or nieces? How many were willing to place someone you loved in danger to save him? No one answered. The silence was uncomfortable and condemning. None of you, Thera said. You all waited for someone else to solve the problem. Then a wolfless young woman from an insignificant pack walked willingly into the beast's cage and remained there. She chose courage while the rest of you chose calculation. Thera turned to Charles. Your Majesty, you have my complete support. Anyone who opposes this union is a fool. Charles inclined his head. Thank you, Councilwoman. The meeting continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Thera had reminded every council member of their own cowardice. By the end, even Aldrich agreed to attend the wedding. When the others departed, Thera approached me. Walk with me. Her tone made clear it was not a suggestion. We moved through palace gardens overflowing with spring flowers. For several minutes, she said nothing and merely examined me with her penetrating gaze. You are not what I expected, she said at last. What did you expect? Someone more aware of the danger she has entered. Thera stopped beside a fountain and trailed her fingers through the water. You love him. That is obvious. But do you understand what being Lunar Queen means? I am learning. Learning will not be enough. You will enter negotiations in which a single careless word could destabilize entire territories. Any sign of weakness may invite a challenge. She paused. And your lack of a wolf will be used against you by everyone who wants to weaken the king. I know. Do you? Her stare sharpened. At present, you are protected by novelty and by the king's obvious devotion. That protection will not last forever. Eventually, you will have to demonstrate your value without standing in his shadow. When that moment comes, the first weapon they use will be your wolflessness. My chest tightened. What can I do? I cannot change what I am. No, but you can change the meaning you assign to it. Thera leaned against the stone edge of the fountain. You are not wolfless because you are weak or defective. You are wolfless because you are something our rigid categories do not understand. That is precisely why you were able to recognize both halves of the king. Wolf hierarchy and traditional power did not blind you. You were saying my greatest weakness is actually my strength. I am telling you to stop calling it a weakness. Her smile was sharp. You ended a curse no one else could break. You are marrying the most powerful alpha in the territories. You accomplished what generations of noble women wanted and failed to achieve. Stop apologizing for the path that brought you here. Her words settled inside me with the weight of truth. Thank you. Do not thank me. Survive. There are straightened. The council will test you. Rival packs will challenge you. Many women desired the place you now hold and will hate you for occupying it. Prepare yourself. How? Remain exactly what you were: intelligent, observant, and unwilling to retreat. Her expression softened only slightly. And trust the king's judgment. Charles is no fool. If he recognizes something powerful in you, then it exists. She left me beside the fountain with her words echoing through my thoughts. I was not a helpless creature who required protection every moment. I was the woman who had entered a beast's cage and survived. That had to mean something. The wedding preparations continued, but I began noticing more than gowns and flowers. I watched the political movements beneath every polite conversation, which packs genuinely welcomed our union, and which merely tolerated it, who saw an opportunity, and who saw a threat. When servants bowed, was the respect sincere or compelled? I attended more council sessions. Soon, I no longer remained a silent observer. Charles encouraged me to participate and often asked for my opinion on matters of policy. The Eastern Territories are requesting additional resources for border patrol, one advisor reported. They claim rogue activity has increased. Increased? I asked before I could stop myself. Or have they simply begun paying attention because they want something? The advisor blinked. I beg your pardon, Miss Catherine. The eastern borders have remained relatively quiet for months, I continued, drawing upon the political histories Charles had taught me. But their alpha is approaching a leadership challenge within his own pack. Securing more resources and presenting himself as a defender of the border would strengthen his political position. Approval flashed in Charles's eyes. An excellent observation. Advisor Rothen, investigate Catherine's theory before we distribute any resources. Rothen bowed. He looked at me with respect that had not existed before. Of course, Your Majesty. News spread rapidly through the palace. The king's chosen maid possessed a talent for politics. Some viewed that as an advantage. Others treated it as one more reason to resent me. At least they were beginning to see something beyond a helpless, wolfless woman. 2 weeks before the wedding, my father arrived. I had neither seen nor contacted him since the night Charles claimed me. Part of me hoped he would remain far away and allow my new life to begin without the weight of our old wounds. Of course, he came. His daughter was marrying the Alpha King. The political value was too great for him to ignore. Thomas delivered the message with careful neutrality. Your father has requested an audience, Miss Catherine. The king asks whether you wish to receive him. My first instinct was to refuse. I wanted to send word that I was too busy for the man who had presented me as a joke. But hiding from him would be cowardice. I was no longer a coward. I will see him in the garden, I said. Not in a formal receiving chamber. I wanted the meeting to happen on ground where I felt strong. My father looked older than I remembered. More grey threaded his hair, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. When he saw me, he bowed. He actually bowed, as though I had finally become someone worthy of recognition. Catherine, you look well. I am well. I kept my voice neutral. Why are you here, father? To congratulate you, of course. To see my daughter before her wedding. He smiled, but the expression never reached his eyes. I am proud of you, Catherine, to have attracted the king's attention and broken his curse. I did not break the curse to gain his attention, I interrupted. I broke it because I loved him, both halves of him, and because he saw worth in me where you never did. My father's smile faltered. That is unfair. I fed you. I kept you safe. You concealed me. You demanded silence from me. You allowed Angelia and the rest of the pack to ridicule me because acknowledging my existence made your life inconvenient. I stepped closer. You offered me as entertainment that night. You intended me to be a joke. When the king claimed me, you did not fight because you were relieved that someone else had taken responsibility for your problem. I was protecting the pack. You were protecting yourself. My voice remained cold and steady. I understand that you did what you believed necessary. But do not come here now and pretend you were always proud. Do not rewrite our history simply to make your cruelty easier to live with. He stared at me as though seeing an unfamiliar person. You have changed. No, I have simply stopped pretending to be smaller than I am. I straightened my shoulders. You may attend the wedding, father, but understand that I am not marrying Charles to elevate our pack or earn your approval. I'm marrying him because we love each other. For the first time in my life, I am choosing something for myself. Catherine, that is all I have to say. Thomas will show you to your room. I walked away from his shock, discomfort, and belated attempt at reconciliation. With each step, I felt lighter. That night, I told Charles what had happened. We were in his private chambers, which had gradually become mine as well. We had agreed to wait until after the wedding before allowing our intimacy to move beyond stolen kisses and careful touches. The curse might have ended, but we still wanted to honor some traditions. How did it feel? Charles asked. We sat before the fire, and he drew me against his chest. Standing up to him, terrifying and liberating at the same time. I spent my whole life wanting his approval and recognition. When I finally had the opportunity to demand them, I realize I no longer needed either. Do you need anything from him now? His voice brushed softly through my hair. Nothing. Then I smiled. Well, not nothing. I still cannot shift, and I am still barren. Those facts did not change when the curse broke. Do they still hurt you? I considered the question honestly. Sometimes. When I see mated wolves running together, or hear stories of pack hunts and moon ceremonies, I feel an ache. It is no longer shame, more like longing for a beautiful place I cannot enter. What if there might be a way? I pulled back sharply. What do you mean? The curse ended, but Morgana's magic remains woven into me. I can feel it in my bones now, no longer hostile, but still present. His grey eyes became serious. Yesterday, I sensed something else. A connection where none existed before. I don't understand. You broke the curse by loving both halves of my soul and recognizing the king and beast as one being. He took my hands. What if that created a bond between us? Not a traditional mating bond, but something similar, something joining your soul to mine. My breath caught. That isn't possible. 5 years ago, I would have said breaking the curse was impossible. He pressed my palm against his chest above his heart. Close your eyes. Catherine, do not analyze. Do not try to explain. Only feel. I obeyed. At first, I felt only the warmth of his skin and the steady beat of his heart. Then something else appeared. A pulse. A connection. A thin golden thread stretching from my heart to his. It was invisible, yet unmistakably real. Mine eyes opened. What is that? A bond created by magic, love, and two souls choosing one another completely. It is not a normal mating bond because those require 2 wolves, but it is something powerful. He hesitated. I think it may allow you to reach my wolf. Not one of my own. No, mine, shared through the bond, almost as though you could borrow my strength. That cannot happen. Magic does not work that way. Ordinary magic does not. Curse magic rewrites reality and invents its own rules. His eyes searched mine. When you freed me, you did more than end a spell. You intertwined our souls. What are you suggesting? That we try shifting together. I would guide you through the transformation and share my wolf through the bond. Hope and terror fought inside me. What if it fails? What if I try and nothing happens? Then we have an answer, and nothing else changes. You remain my Luna. I continue loving you. His smile became gentle. But if it succeeds, you may finally know what it feels like to run on 4 legs and taste the freedom wolves describe. I wanted it. I wanted it so desperately that the desire itself hurt. But I was terrified of hope, terrified of reaching for something beautiful only to feel it disappear like every other dream. Not yet, I said at last, after the wedding. Once everything is settled, then perhaps we can try. Charles could not fully hide his disappointment, but understanding remained stronger. Whenever you are ready, the bond will not vanish. We sat together in the firelight for some time. Charles, I said eventually, thank you for allowing me to choose, for not pushing me. I kissed his jaw. Thank you for seeing more than my limitations. Always, he murmured. You were never limited, Catherine. The world simply lacked the vision to recognize your strength. Held in the arms of a king who had once been a beast, I felt something entirely new. I felt complete. 1 week before the wedding, Angelia came to the palace. I had not invited her or even told her the date. Apparently, my father had done both. She arrived dressed in a gown worth more than most people earned in a year. Her hair was flawless, and I could almost sense her silver wolf purring beneath her skin. Of course, she found me in the library. So this is where you hide, she said, taking a chair without invitation. Surrounded by books, pretending to be educated. I did not look up from the page. Hello, Angelia. Hello, sister. The word dripped with acid. Congratulations on your coming marriage. Quite an accomplishment for someone who spent most of her life washing dishes. Is there something you want, or did you come merely to remind me that you are beautiful? Her laugh was sharp and brittle. I do not need to remind you. You have always known. She leaned closer. But I am curious. About what? How did you do it? For the first time, genuine confusion appeared in her voice. How did someone like you, wolfless, barren, insignificant, end up here, preparing to marry the most powerful alpha in the territories? I closed the book and met her gaze. I remained myself. That is all. I did not pretend to be you or anyone else. I told the truth. Honesty. She sounded offended by the idea. I spent my whole life becoming perfect. Beautiful, powerful, desirable. Yet you are the one wearing the future queen's ring. Perhaps that is the reason, I said quietly. Maybe Charles never wanted perfect. Maybe he needed real. Angelia stared at me. Envy lived in her expression, but beneath it I saw something like grief. I could have had this, she whispered. If father had presented me that night instead of you. If I had been asked to sing. No, I said gently. You could not have. Why not? You would have performed the lunar hymn exactly as tradition demanded, powerfully, flawlessly, and without vulnerability. That was not what Charles needed to hear. So I am being punished for being strong. You are not being punished. You will marry well, Angelia. You will find an alpha who values your beauty and strength. I held her gaze. But Charles needed someone who understood what it meant to be broken. You were never going to be that person. She stood suddenly and smoothed her gown. I do not understand you, Catherine. I never have. At the doorway, she paused. But I hope you are happy. Truly. Because if you have manipulated this somehow, if this is not real, it will destroy you. I know, I said. That is why I am being careful to deserve it. She left without another word. I returned to my reading, no longer haunted by the woman I had once believed I needed to become. The night before the wedding, Charles found me on the balcony beneath a field of stars. Nervous? He asked, coming behind me and wrapping both arms around my waist. Terrified, I admitted. Tomorrow I become Lunar Queen. Everyone in the kingdom will watch, judge, and wait for me to fail. Then let them watch. He kissed my temple. Let them judge. You have already proven yourself where it matters. You ended an impossible curse, survived the beast, and earned the council's respect. Everything tomorrow is ceremony. That is easy for you to say. You were born for this. I was born into duty, unbearable expectations, and crushing loneliness. He turned me toward him. But you chose this life. You chose me. You chose something that frightened you because you desired it enough to become brave. No bloodline or birthright is more impressive than that. You always know what to say. That is because praising you is easy. He cupped my face. Tomorrow, Catherine, you become my Luna, my queen, and my equal partner in everything. Are you ready? I looked into the storm-grey eyes that had once belonged to a beast and now held only certainty and love. Yes, I said. I am ready. He kissed me slowly, deeply, and with all the promise of our future. Tomorrow would bring public vows and political performance. Tonight belonged only to us two people once considered broken, who had found one another in the dark and chosen to create something beautiful. That was more than enough. On the morning of my wedding, I woke to falling snow. It was late spring. Snow should have been impossible, yet thick white flakes drifted past the window and covered the palace grounds in untouched white. Thomas arrived with breakfast, wonder deepening every line of his old face. It is magic, Miss Catherine. Ancient magic, the kind that reveals itself when something of great importance is taking place. Snow in spring certainly seems important. So does the coronation of a lunar queen. Perhaps the moon goddess herself is watching. He placed the tray on a table and handed me a small envelope. This appeared shortly before dawn. No messenger brought it. It bears no seal. It was simply lying on the king's desk. My hands trembled as I opened it. A single sentence had been written in elegant script. Blessings upon the one who sees another whole. May your bond never break. Morgana. The witch who had cursed Charles was offering us her blessing. I pressed the message against my chest as unexpected tears burned my eyes. Morgana had every reason to hate, punish, and destroy. Yet even she acknowledged what Charles and I had created from the suffering between us. Miss Catherine, Thomas said gently, it is time to prepare. The next several hours disappeared in a blur. Servants helped me bathe in water scented with moonflower and silver sage, herbs traditionally used in lunar ceremonies. They dried my hair until it shone, then wove it into an intricate crown braid decorated with tiny crystals that caught the light like stars. The gown took my breath away. Ivory silk fell around me like water. Silver thread formed delicate patterns of moons and wolves across the fabric. The neckline was modest and elegant, and the long sleeves fit closely around my arms. It was nothing like the heavy, extravagant gowns favoured by noble women. It was simple, beautiful, and perfectly suited to me. Before the ceremony, the servant removed the promise ring from my right hand and fastened it to a chain around my neck. It would remain there until wedding bands replaced it at the altar. When I finally turned toward the mirror, I saw a queen. You are beautiful, Miss Catherine, one young servant whispered with tears in her eyes. I barely recognized my reflection. The wounded girl in a stained kitchen dress had disappeared. In her place stood a woman who appeared composed, regal, and worthy of standing beside a king. I only hoped the confidence was more than an illusion. The ceremony took place in the same great hall where I had performed the lunar hymn and begun this entire impossible journey. The room, however, had been transformed. Thousands of white flowers hung from the ceiling in a canopy of blossoms. Silver ribbons reflected the light from immense chandeliers. At the far end, before floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the snow-covered courtyard, stood an altar carved from moonstone. The hall was full. Every influential Alpha and Luna in the territories had come. Council members wore their formal regalia. Nobles I had never met stood dressed in their finest clothing, and every one of them turned to watch when I entered. My father stood with the delegation from our pack. Angelia was beside him in ice blue silk, her expression carefully controlled. Thera caught my eye and gave one small nod of encouragement. At the altar waited Charles. He wore ceremonial black embroidered with silver wolves that matched the patterns on my gown. His hair had been tied back, revealing the hard, familiar lines of his face. The moment he saw me, His grey eyes locked on mine and his breath caught. He looked at me as though no one else existed. I walked the long aisle alone. My father did not escort me. I was not being handed from one man to another. I was choosing. With each step, I felt the pressure of every judgment in the room and heard the faint movement of whispers. Wolfless. Barren. Nobody. But also curse breaker. Courageous. Chosen. I held my head high, kept my eyes on Charles, and walked willingly toward my future. When I reached the altar, he extended his hand. His fingers closed around mine like an anchor. "You are breathtaking," he murmured too softly for anyone else to hear. "You are completely biased," I whispered. "Completely." High Priestess Moira raised both hands. She was the oldest and most respected spiritual leader in the territories. Silence spread through the hall as her ancient voice began the ceremony. "We gather beneath the witness of the moon to bind two souls in sacred union. Not only an Alpha King and his chosen Luna, but two people who walked through darkness and emerged whole." She turned to Charles. "Alpha King Charles Washington, you were cursed and divided from yourself, separated between man and beast. The moon goddess tested you, and you endured. Yet endurance alone did not bring freedom. Love did. Do you acknowledge this truth?" "I do," Charles answered clearly. "Do you accept Catherine, daughter of Peter William, breaker of curses and speaker of truth, as your lunar queen? Will you stand beside her in governing these territories, share your burdens and joys, and accept her as your partner in every matter?" "I do," without hesitation or doubt. The priestess turned toward me. Warmth entered her aged eyes. "Catherine, others named you broken, defective, and lesser. You proved that strength takes many forms and that the courage to remain can equal the power to fight. Do you acknowledge this truth?" My throat tightened. "I do. Do you accept Charles Washington, Alpha King and bearer of a soul once divided, as your mate and king? Will you stand beside him in governing these territories, share his burdens and joys, and become his partner in every matter?" I looked at the man who had recognized value in me when no one else had. He had taught me that my worth extended far beyond my defects. He loved me with both his human mind and the wild heart of the beast. "I do," I answered with complete certainty. The priestess smiled. "Then by the authority granted to me through the moon goddess and the oldest laws of our kind, I bind you together. Let no wolf, though Alpha, and no force in this world divide what has been freely joined." She revealed two rings of silver bands set with moonstone and obsidian, moonlight and darkness intertwined. Charles lifted my left hand and placed the ring upon it. "With this ring, I give you my heart, my crown, and my truth. Every part of me, holy." I took his hand and placed the matching ring on his finger. "With this ring, I give you my courage, my honesty, and my love. Every part of me, holy." Then it is complete, Moira declared. Alpha King Charles and Lunar Queen Catherine, united through choice and blessed beneath the moon. May your reign endure, and may your love remain unbroken. Applause erupted through the hall, sincere from some, ceremonial from others. None of it mattered. Charles drew me into his arms and kissed me before the entire kingdom. The world narrowed until there was only the two of us. When we finally parted, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "My queen," he murmured. "My king." For the first time in my life, the title felt right. The celebration that followed was overwhelming. Hundreds of guests filled the feast. Each required a greeting, an acknowledgement, or a carefully measured conversation. Alphas attempted to gain favor. Lunas delivered compliments designed to conceal questions and threats. Nobles positioned themselves for future advantage. I smiled until my cheeks ached and spoke until my throat became raw. Charles remained close, one hand resting at my waist or against my back like a constant source of stability. Whenever a guest became too condescending or a question too pointed, he redirected the conversation with effortless authority. "Your Luna is remarkably composed for someone with so little experience," an elder Luna observed. Her smile held no warmth. "Catherine possesses more wisdom than many people twice her age," Charles answered coolly. "Experience is not measured only in years, Lady Helena. The Queen broke a curse that had endured for 5 years," Thera added, arriving at my side at precisely the right moment. "That gives her more experience with the impossible than anyone else in this room can claim." Lady Helena withdrew, chastened. "Thank you," I whispered to Thera. "Do not thank me. Survive." Her eyes moved across the crowded room. 20 women here desired the position you now hold. At least half will attempt to weaken you in the coming months. Remain alert. How do I fight people who smile while plotting against me? By becoming more intelligent, more strategic, and absolutely unwilling to retreat." Thera's eyes gleamed. "You survived an actual beast. Nobles are simply beasts dressed in finer clothing." As the evening progressed, the formal celebration gave way to an older, more primal tradition. The wolves wanted to run. Following the coronation of a lunar queen, the gathered pack traditionally shifted and hunted beneath the moon. The shared ritual was intended to establish the Luna's position within the hierarchy. My stomach dropped. I could not shift. Everyone knew, and now the entire court would watch me remain behind while they transformed and ran. My absence would become a public display of everything I lacked. Charles sensed my tension immediately. "We do not have to perform the run," he said quietly. "We can excuse ourselves and claim exhaustion." "No." I straightened my spine. "If I am going to serve as Lunar Queen, I cannot hide from pack customs simply because they reveal my limitations. Catherine, we can. I will watch. I will celebrate with everyone. Tomorrow, we can manage whatever political consequences arise from having a Luna who cannot run beside her pack." His face held equal parts pride in my courage and anger at the unfairness. "This is wrong. Life is often wrong. I am still here." I kissed his cheek. "Go run with your pack. I will be all right." Everyone moved into the courtyard. The untouched snow was soon marked by hundreds of footsteps. A full moon hung above us, bright and commanding, calling to every wolf soul present. Wrapped in a heavy fur cloak, I watched from a balcony as the transformations began. It was both beautiful and terrible. Bones cracked. Human bodies reshaped. Fur appeared in countless colours. Within moments, the courtyard filled with wolves' enormous alphas, graceful females, and younger wolves restless to test their strength. At the centre stood Charles's wolf. He was immense, black as midnight, and powerful beyond anything else in the courtyard. His eyes remained the same storm grey. He looked up at me. Our bond pulsed with his longing. He wanted me beside him, not watching from above. The pack began moving toward the forest beyond the palace, a living river of fur, teeth, and ancient instinct. Charles remained still for one more moment, unable to look away from me. "Go," I mouthed. "I'm fine." He held my gaze, then turned and ran after the others. Soon the forest swallowed them all. I remained until silence returned and the only thing left beneath the moon was snow. Then I went inside alone. Without thinking, I found my way to the library, my refuge, and the place where I felt most completely myself. I expected to be devastated. I thought I would cry for what I could never experience. Instead, I felt peaceful. I could not shift. I had missed the ceremonial run. But I was still a queen. I was still loved. My value remained untouched by the absence of a wolf. That was enough. "You are remarkable." I spun around. Thera stood in the doorway, still human. "You didn't join the run?" I asked. "I wanted to speak with you." She entered and took a chair. "The pack run is important. but so is ensuring that our new Luna understands she does not need to prove herself through every traditional measure. Everyone else is outside. Everyone else follows tradition without questioning why it exists. You have always been different. That difference is a source of power, not a flaw. Thera leaned forward. Do you know what the oldest texts say about the first Lunas, before formal pack lore and the creation of territories? No, they were not selected because of the strength of their wolves. They were chosen for wisdom, the ability to recognize truth, understand their people's hearts, and lead with compassion rather than dominance. Her eyes held mine. You were closer to those ancient Lunas than many wolf-born queens could ever be. Because you cannot depend on physical superiority, you must lead with your mind and heart. That is a generous way to interpret my situation. It is the truth. The sooner you accept it, the stronger you will become. She rose. The pack will return soon, filled with wild joy from the run. Charles will come back worried and guilty for leaving you. Do not allow him to drown in that guilt. Show him you are not merely fine. Show him you have no need to shift in order to stand as his equal. Thera departed before I could answer. I remained in the quiet library, turning her words over. Perhaps being different was not a deficit. Perhaps it was simply another perspective, a form of leadership that valued understanding over force and wisdom, domination. Maybe wolflessness had never been the tragedy everyone told me it was. Maybe it was only different. An hour later, Charles found me curled in a library chair, completely absorbed in a book about ancient lunar ceremonies. Catherine, his voice was rough after shifting and filled with uncertainty. Are you all right? I looked up and offered him a warm, honest smile. I am perfect. How was the run? He stared at me as though I had spoken in an unknown language. How can you ask about the run? You could not transform. You were unable to participate. How can you be perfect? Because I discovered something. I lifted the book. The first Lunas did not perform pack runs. That tradition began only about 3 centuries ago when the Alpha Council formalized pack law. Before then, Lunas led as teachers, healers, advisors, and spiritual guides. Their worth did not depend upon running beside an alpha. You researched lunar history while we were gone. I had time. I set the book aside. Charles, I know you feel guilty. I know you want to repair this. Give me a wolf, or force the pack to accept me despite not having one. I stood. But I do not require a repair. I am who I am supposed to be, a Luna who leads differently. That is not something to apologize for. He crossed the room and held me tightly. How are you real? He whispered. How are you this brave, resilient, and perfect? I am not perfect. I am simply tired of apologizing for existing as myself. I leaned back to meet his eyes. I am your Luna Queen, not because I can shift or hunt with the pack, but because we love one another, and are stronger together than apart. That is what matters. He kissed me with desperation and relief. When we separated, tears shone in his eyes. I love every part of you, Catherine. Every difference that makes you who you are. I know. I smiled. And I love you both halves, always. We stood wrapped in each other while moonlight streamed through the library windows. Something settled deep inside me. This was where I belonged, not in spite of being wolfless, but partly because the perspective it gave me would allow me to lead in ways others could not. I was exactly who I was meant to be. Later, in the royal chambers we now shared, Charles raised the subject I had avoided. Do you still want to try? He asked. To discover whether our bond can let you shift through my wolf. I had almost forgotten the offer he made before the wedding, the possibility that our magical link might allow me to experience his transformation. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants it desperately. I want to know what shifting feels like. But another part is afraid of failure, he completed gently. Yes, Baudouin. More than that, I am afraid of wanting it too much. I am afraid that hope will destroy me if nothing happens. Then remove the pressure. He took my hands. Do not call it an attempt to become a wolf. Call it an experiment, a question. If it succeeds, we celebrate. If it does not, nothing changes. You remain my Luna and remain perfect as you are. I searched his face. You truly mean that? With all my heart. He squeezed my fingers. But I also believe you deserve the opportunity to know whether it is possible, not because you require a wolf to be complete, but because experiences shape us, and this is one you have never been allowed. He was right. I had spent my entire life wondering how transformation felt, how the forest smelled through a wolf's senses, and what freedom tasted like on 4 legs. Even if I failed, at least I would no longer wonder whether I had been too afraid to try. All right, I said. Let's try. We went to the private royal courtyard, enclosed by high walls and hidden from watching eyes. The snow had stopped, leaving the world clean and silent. Charles removed his clothes without embarrassment, as wolves considered nudity before a shift entirely natural. I still blushed. Come here. He extended his hand. The instant I took it, our bond strengthened. The golden thread between our hearts brightened. Close your eyes, he instructed. Find the bond and follow it into me. Reach toward my wolf. Do not force anything. Move with it. I closed my eyes and followed the connection. It grew brighter and stronger. Then I felt him. Not only Charles the man, but a deeper presence, primal, ancient, and both human and other. Thought and instinct fused together. His wolf. Good, Charles murmured. Now I will shift. Stay connected. Let my transformation carry you. His body began to change. For the first time, I did not experience it as an observer. Through the bond, the transformation moved through me as well. My bones began to ache. My skin prickled. Every sense sharpened beyond reason. Then pain arrived. Beautiful, terrible pain surged through me as my body attempted to reshape itself. I gasped and lost my concentration. The bond snapped loose. When I opened mine eyes, Charles stood before me in magnificent wolf form, concern filling his storm-grey gaze. I remained human. Unchanged. I felt it. I breathed. For a moment, the shift began, but I could not hold it. Charles returned to human form within seconds. You felt the transformation, Catherine. That is extraordinary. Most wolves cannot share a shift even through a natural mating bond. But I did not change. I tried and failed. You connected to my wolf through a bond that should not exist. You experienced the beginning of a transformation no wolfless person has ever felt. He pulled me into his arms. That is not failure. It is a miracle. Tears ran down my face, carrying wonder and frustration together. It hurt so much, and I still could not finish. The first transformation hurts every wolf, even those born for it. He stroked my hair. You took the first step. With time and practice, perhaps you can take another, and then another, until one day the transformation completes. Or perhaps I cannot. Maybe that single moment is as far as I will ever reach. Then that moment is enough. He tilted my face toward his. You are enough. Wolf or human, shifted or unchanged. You are my Luna and the woman I love. That truth will never change. I buried my face against his chest and cried for the lonely girl who had always dreamed of running, for the queen who might never fully transform, and for every complicated strand of grief and hope knotted inside me. Charles held me through all of it, patient and loving. We returned to our chambers as dawn coloured the sky pink and gold. It was technically our wedding night, though we had spent most of it attempting a magical transformation rather than consummating our marriage in the expected way. I'm sorry, I said when we collapsed onto the enormous bed. This was supposed to be romantic, and instead I spent the night crying about a failed shift. Charles laughed with the genuine joy I loved. Catherine, we ended a 5-year curse, married before the entire kingdom, and attempted to share a wolf through forbidden magic. This may be the most eventful wedding night in history. Romance is overrated compared with that. Entirely. You are certain you aren't disappointed? He rolled onto his side and looked at me seriously. I married a woman who entered a beast's cage carrying nothing but riddles and courage. A woman who sees every broken piece of me and calls it beautiful. His hand cupped my cheek. You became queen and immediately began researching how to serve the kingdom better. How could I possibly be disappointed? I kissed him softly, filled with gratitude and love. When the kiss deepened, when his hands explored me with gentle reverence, and when we finally joined as mates, partners, and two souls united through choice, it was perfect. Not because I had transformed, proven myself, or fulfilled someone else's ideal. It was perfect because I was exactly myself, and that was enough. 3 months passed. 3 months of learning how to serve as Lunar Queen. I attended council meetings, mediated disputes, and represented the crown at territorial gatherings. I made mistakes, accepted correction, faced resistance, and slowly earned respect through my actions rather than my birth. I also spent 3 months trying to shift. Every night, Charles and I returned to the private courtyard. Every night, I followed our bond into his wolf and attempted to let his transformation carry me. Every night, I failed. I could feel the process now. The primal force waited just beyond my reach. My bones prepared to change. Instinct stirred beneath my skin. But the transformation always stopped at the final barrier, as though some invisible edge prevented me from crossing. It feels like standing at the top of a cliff, I told Thera one afternoon. The sharp-tongued councilwoman and the wolfless queen had become unlikely friends. I can see where I'm supposed to go, but I cannot make myself leap. Perhaps you were not meant to, Thera suggested thoughtfully. The bond may allow you to touch Charles's wolf without changing what you fundamentally are. Human, but linked to something greater. That is not enough. I want... Frustration stopped the rest. What do you want, Catherine? I want to run beside him. I want to know what it feels like to be complete. You are complete, Thera said sharply. You have become obsessed with what you do not possess and stopped recognizing everything you do. She leaned toward me. You can feel his wolf. You share a connection more profound than most traditional mating bonds. You became Lunar Queen without ever shifting. At what point will any of that be enough? The question hurt because it was true. I had turned transformation into an obsession, another measure by which I could declare myself a failure. I should have celebrated how far I had come, yet I could not release the desire. The crisis began on a clear autumn morning. A messenger arrived from one of the smaller packs in the Southern Territories, a remote community often ignored by the rest of the kingdom. Their alpha had died, leaving the pack in chaos. 3 wolves had challenged for leadership, and the conflict among their supporters was becoming violent. They request royal intervention, the messenger explained before the council. More specifically, they ask for the Lunar Queen to mediate. He hesitated. They believe a wolfless Luna will remain impartial and will not favour one challenger because of the strength of his or her wolf. The council chamber erupted. This is inappropriate. The Queen has no experience with such a situation. Sending her into a divided pack would be dangerous. I will go, I said quietly. The room fell silent. Charles had been listening with carefully restrained anger. He turned toward me. Catherine, you are under no obligation to accept. Yes, I nan. I stood and addressed the council. They requested me specifically. If I refuse, I confirm every accusation that I am Lunar Queen in title alone too fragile to manage a true crisis. You could be harmed, Aldrich protested. The challenges have already become violent and unpredictable. Then my lack of a wolf may protect me. They cannot sense me as a rival alpha or a threat. I met his gaze. I will enter as a neutral mediator, someone unaffected by dominant displays or contests of strength. Is that not precisely what this pack needs? Ferris slowly nodded. She is right. This provides an opportunity to establish the Queen as a different kind of leader, one who settles disputes through insight rather than force. It is too dangerous, Charles said, his voice tight. I will not permit it. I turned toward him. The words hurt, but I kept my tone formal. With respect, Your Majesty, you do not have the authority to forbid me from fulfilling the responsibilities of Lunar Queen. This is my duty, and I intend to honor it. The challenge remained between us, public and impossible to ignore. Charles stared at me for a long time. Conflict moved through his grey eyes. At last, he nodded. Very well. You will take a full royal guard, and I will accompany you. No, my answer came firmly. If you appear, every challenger will treat you as the true authority. They need to see that I can stand alone. Thomas may come as my advisor, along with a small guard for protection. I held his gaze. But this must be my mission, not yours. The muscles in his jaw tightened hard enough to crack stone. Yet he was a good king, good enough to recognize when his queen was right, even while fear urged him to refuse. Fine, he said through clenched teeth. But if anyone harms you, I will reduce that territory to ashes. Your warning has been noted, Your Majesty. 2 days later, Thomas, 4 guards, and I departed for the south. The journey lasted a week and carried us through increasingly wild country. The southern territory was beautiful but severe, dominated by dense forests and rocky hills. It was land that produced strong wolves with little patience for weakness. At the border, we were met by Rowan, a grizzled beater who had held the pack together temporarily after the old alpha's death. Lunar Queen. He bowed respectfully, though skepticism remained in his assessing eyes. You are younger than I expected, and the stories say you have no wolf. The stories are correct. I dismounted and met his gaze without flinching. Does that trouble you? Less than the 3 fools attempting to tear this pack apart. He motioned for us to follow. Come. Meet them before deciding whether the situation can be saved. The pack house was modest, designed for function rather than beauty. Signs showed that it had once supported a stable community. Now tension poisoned the air. Pack members had divided into factions and watched one another with open hostility. The 3 challengers were exactly what I expected of powerful wolves in their prime, each convinced leadership belonged to them. Garrett, the late Alpha's son, claimed the right of inheritance. Sasha, their strongest fighter, claimed the right of strength. Liam, their most capable strategist, claimed the right of wisdom. They met me in the council room, and hostility appeared immediately. This is who the crown sent. Garrett sneered. A wolfless female. No offence, Your Majesty, but how can you judge an alpha challenge if you have never transformed? Because I have not come to judge your wolves, I've answered calmly. I have come to judge whether any of you can lead. Any fool can possess strength. Leadership requires more. Sasha laughed. At least you have courage. What is your plan, little Luna? How do you intend to solve our conflict? Begin by telling me why each of you wants to become alpha. I want real reasons, not claims that you are strongest or that the position belongs to you. The 3 exchanged glances. Clearly, no one had asked them that question. Garrett spoke first. This pack is my father's legacy. I grew up knowing I would lead one day. It is my right. A right means nothing if you cannot carry the responsibilities attached to it. What would you do differently from your father? He hesitated. I would strengthen the borders so we are never vulnerable again. How? More patrols. Better training. Alliances with neighbouring packs. I recorded his answer and turned to Sasha. Your reason. This pack has become soft, she said bluntly. The old alpha weakened in his final years. We need someone who reminds everyone what strength means and forces other packs to respect us again. How would you build that respect? Through fear or trust? Through strength. That is the only language wolves understand. Is it? I looked around the room. Pack members listened from the doorways. Young wolves watched with frightened eyes. I see many people exhausted by conflict and afraid they will choose the wrong side. They do not need more demonstrations of force. They need stability. Sasha narrowed her eyes but offered no argument. I looked at Liam. And you? I want to lead because I see what this pack could become. We are isolated, but isolation could make us self-sufficient. We possess rare medicinal plants, clean water, and a strategic location. He leaned forward. I would create trade, build alliances, and make this pack valuable rather than merely feared or pitied. That is a strong vision. But can you enforce your authority? Intelligence has little value if stronger wolves refuse to follow you. I would rather earn loyalty through respect than fear, Liam said. But I can fight when necessary. I simply believe force should be the last solution, not the first. I studied them. Each possessed genuine strengths. Each also carried weaknesses capable of destroying the pack. None was entirely wrong. None was entirely right. This is what I see, I said at last. Garrett, tradition and loyalty support you, but you are so focused upon preserving your father's legacy that you have not developed a vision of your own. I turned. Sasha, you have courage and strength, but you confuse leadership with domination. If you rule only through force, you will divide the pack further. Then I faced Liam. You possess intelligence and long-term vision, but you avoid confrontation so readily that others may interpret restraint as weakness. The room became silent. So what is your answer? Rowan asked. A pack cannot have 3 alphas. No, but an alpha may have advisors whose abilities correct his weaknesses. I looked at all 3 challengers. I propose a trial arrangement. Liam becomes alpha because he offers the clearest future for the pack. Garrett serves as his beta, giving the leadership traditional legitimacy and managing internal structure. I turned towards Sasha. You will command the warriors and take responsibility for defense and training. You expect me to serve beneath him. Danger sharpened Sasha's voice. I expect you to serve the pack. All 3 of you claim the welfare of these wolves is your greatest concern. Prove it. Set aside your pride and work together in the roles suited to your strengths. I met her blazing eyes. Or continue fighting until this pack collapses and its members scatter into other territories. The choice belongs to you. The tension became suffocating. Liam spoke first. I accept. If Garrett and Sasha agree, I will serve as alpha. But I want both of you beside me. I am intelligent enough to understand that I cannot lead alone. Garrett visibly struggled with wounded pride. Finally, he lowered his head. For my father's memory and for the pack, I will become beta. Everyone looked towards Sasha. She stared at me with anger and reluctant respect. You have nerve, entering a hostile pack and telling 3 alphas what they should do. She remained silent for a long moment. Fine. I will lead the warriors. But if Liam proves weak, I reserve the right to challenge him again. That is fair. Liam agreed. Only then did I release the breath I had been holding. Then the matter is settled. Liam will serve as alpha, Garrett as beta, and Sasha as commander of the warriors. You will submit quarterly reports to the Royal Council. Any serious conflict among the 3 of you will be brought to me for mediation. Rowan stared at me in disbelief. You actually did it. You ended a 3-way challenge without a single fight. I did not solve the conflict. They did. I merely helped them look beyond their pride and recognize what the pack required. I stood. Now I believe we have an alpha ceremony to conduct. The ceremony was simple but powerful. Liam swore to protect and serve. The pack accepted him through submission and a chorus of howls. As I stood beside him, the energy of the pack shifted. It was not complete unity that would require time, but hope had returned. For the first time, they believed the future might improve. That night, as we prepared to leave, Sasha found me. "I misjudged you," she said without introduction. "I assumed a wolfless Luna would be weak. Instead, you entered enemy territory and faced 3 alphas without flinching. That requires a different kind of strength. Thank you. How did you know?" she asked. "How did you know dividing our responsibilities would work? Because my entire life, people claimed I could only possess value if I performed one specific act. If I shifted, I would matter. If I did not, I was worthless." I smiled. "People do not work that way. We all possess different abilities. Wisdom lies in arranging those strengths so they support one another rather than compete." Sasha nodded slowly. "That is actually wise. Try not to sound so astonished." She laughed, genuinely and warmly. "The king chose well. Even without a wolf, you carry the heart of a Luna." When we returned to the capital, Charles was pacing the throne room like a caged animal. The moment he saw me, he crossed the room in 3 strides and crushed me against him so tightly that breathing became difficult. "Never do that to me again," he muttered into my hair. "Do what?" "Fulfill my duties. Walk into danger without me." I spent the entire week imagining every terrible thing that might happen. He pulled back and held my face. "And instead, I successfully mediated the conflict, created a new leadership structure, and prevented bloodshed." I grinned. Thera was correct. In certain situations, wolflessness is an advantage. I do not care whether it is an advantage. I care that you returned safely. But he was smiling now, pride mixing with relief. "The reports say you were magnificent. You faced 3 alpha challengers and convinced them to work together. Very appropriate behavior for a Lunar Queen. I learned from an excellent teacher." I kissed him softly. "Now can we go to bed? I have travelled for 2 weeks, and I am exhausted. Anything my queen desires." Yet sleep would not come that night. I kept hearing Sasha's words. "You carry the heart of a Luna." I remembered Thera telling me that I was exactly what I was meant to be. Suddenly, I understood. I had continued trying to shift because I believed I had something to prove. I wanted to resemble every other Luna and run with the pack. But transformation had never defined a Luna. A Luna required leadership, insight, and courage. She had to recognize people wholly and help them become their strongest selves. She had to remain firm in her identity even when the world demanded she become someone else. I did not need to shift. I needed to stop believing I was incomplete without it. "Charles," I shook his shoulder. He woke instantly and reached toward weapons no longer kept beside the bed. "What happened?" "Nothing is wrong." I realized something. I sat upright and faced him in the moonlight. "I no longer want to attempt shifting." Concern entered his face. "Catherine, if the failed attempts are discouraging you, we can continue. With practice—" "No, you do not understand. I want to stop because I do not need it." I took his hand. I believed transforming would make me complete and prove I was a real Luna. That was never true. I am already complete. I am already a Luna. Shifting would be another experience, not a requirement for my worth. Charles studied me carefully. "Are you certain? If you choose to continue, I will support you." "I am certain." For the first time since he offered to share his wolf, peace filled me completely. I am exactly what I should be. Wolfless, yes, but also intelligent, courageous, and able to lead in ways others cannot. That is enough. It is more than enough. He pulled me into his arms, and relief flowed through our bond. "I never wanted you to transform because I considered you incomplete. I only wanted you to possess a choice. And I am choosing myself exactly as I am. We lay down wrapped around one another. For the first time in months, I slept deeply, dreamlessly, and in perfect peace. The following morning, Thomas appeared at the door with an apologetic expression. "Your Majesty, a visitor arrived at the gates at dawn. She asked for you specifically." "Who?" Charles asked. The guards would not approach her. Thomas swallowed. "They say she smells of ancient magic." My heart accelerated. Charles and I dressed quickly and went to the throne room. A woman stood in a pool of morning sunlight. I had never met her, yet I recognized her immediately. Morgana Wilson. She was smaller than I expected, only slightly taller than me. Streaks of grey ran through her dark hair, and her eyes resembled winter storms. She wore ordinary travelling clothes, but power radiated from her like heat from buried coals. "Lunar Queen Catherine," she said, surprisingly gentle, "I have waited a long time to meet you. You are the witch who cursed Charles." I kept my voice steady. "I am. And you are the woman who broke the curse." Her smile was sad but sincere. I observed from a distance through scrying magic. I needed to know whether the spell ended honestly or whether someone discovered a loophole. Charles moved closer to me in silent protection. "And what did you discover?" "That she loved you completely. Both halves, without manipulation, calculation, or reservation." Unfallen tears brightened Morgana's eyes. "That is rare. Most people love an idea, or only the convenient pieces of another person. Catherine witnessed the king and the beast, intellect and emotion, strength and vulnerability, and chose all of it. Why have you come?" I asked. "To apologize and to offer a gift." Morgana reached into her travelling bag and removed a small vial filled with luminous silver liquid. "This is the essence of moonlight, rare and extremely old magic. If you drink it, it will complete the transformation your bond began. You will become capable of shifting fully and running as a wolf." Silence filled the room. Every part of my body wanted to reach for the vial. It contained the dream I had carried throughout my life. Then I remembered the decision I made the night before. I remembered choosing myself. "Thank you," I said carefully. "But I do not need it." Morgana's brows rose. "You are refusing." "I am choosing myself. I have no wolf, and that is all right. I became Lunar Queen because of who I am, not in spite of what I lack." I met her ancient eyes. "I truly appreciate the offer, but I do not require magic to make me complete. I am already whole." For a long moment, Morgana only stared. Then she laughed. The sound held bells, sorrow, and joy all at once. "Oh, child. Magnificent child." She wiped tears from her eyes. "Do you understand what you have just done? Refuse an enchanted gift. You passed the final test." She looked at Charles. "The curse had 3 parts. First, you remained divided until someone loved both halves. That condition was fulfilled. Second, that love had to be genuine and free of hunger for power or advantage. Catherine fulfilled that as well." Morgana turned back toward me. "The third condition required the one who loved you to accept herself just as completely, to look upon her own supposed brokenness and choose it without magical correction or supernatural escape." My breath caught. The vial was a test. Everything is a test, child. You passed with grace. Morgana smiled. "The curse is now not only lifted, but completed. The spell that divided Charles, connected your souls, and bound you together is sealed permanently. Nothing can reverse what you have built." She pressed the vial into my hand anyway. "Keep it. Not because you need it, but because choosing not to use an available solution can be more powerful than never having a choice. If you change your mind one day, the possibility will remain." "I will not change my mind." "Perhaps not. But life is long, and certainty often changes." She stepped back. "I came to make amends and learn whether the curse I created in grief had produced anything besides suffering. Instead, I found two people who completed each other's broken pieces, not by repairing them, but through acceptance. Her expression softened. That is a form of healing I did not know existed. Your daughter, I said quietly. Margaret. I am sorry for what happened to her. Morgana's composure broke. Thank you. She was everything to me. Losing her destroyed me. She looked toward Charles. Perhaps some good emerged from the destruction. You learned compassion, your majesty. You experienced separation from yourself, and that suffering made you capable of loving this extraordinary woman. It does not make my decision right, Charles said. I cannot undo Margaret's execution, but I am sorry, truly sorry for your loss. I know. Morgana's voice became quiet. And I forgive you. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because carrying hatred has exhausted me. She turned toward the door. Live well, both of you. Create something beautiful from what was broken. And remember that somewhere in the wilds, an old witch is watching and wishing you joy. Morgana left as quietly as she had arrived, disappearing into the morning light. I stared at the vial in my palm. It held liquid possibility the power to become the wolf I had always imagined. Then I placed it in a drawer of my desk and closed the drawer firmly. Perhaps one day I would want to use it. Perhaps one day I might choose to try again. But that day I chose myself, exactly as I was. 1 year after the curse broke, the great hall was decorated for an anniversary celebration. Charles and I had spent 12 months ruling together. The year had brought victories and difficulties aboard the disputes, political manoeuvring, 3 additional pack mediations, and more council debates than either of us cared to count. It had also brought laughter, love, quiet mornings studying in the library, stolen kisses between meetings, and nights spent safely in each other's arms. We had created something beautiful from the pieces everyone once called broken. The anniversary gathering was smaller than our wedding. Only close friends, trusted advisors, and the pack leaders who had proven themselves allies were invited. Thomas delivered a toast that left nearly everyone crying. There followed with one that made the entire room laugh. Rowan travelled from the Southern Territory with news that Liam, Kerrit, and Sasha continued working together successfully. They argue like siblings, he said with a grin, but they are building something strong. All 3 credit you, Luna Queen, for looking beyond their pride and recognizing what they could become together. As the celebration drew to a close, Charles guided me onto the balcony, the same place where, 1 year earlier, we had marvelled at his freedom. Are you happy? He asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. Completely. More than I ever believed possible. He kissed my temple. I have something for you. Charles, we agreed there would be no gifts. This is not a gift. It is information. He turned me toward him, his expression serious. I have been studying ancient bonding magic, specifically bonds formed when a curse breaks and joins souls that could not otherwise connect. Why? Because I wanted to understand what exists between us and what happened when you freed me. He took my hands. Our bond is not merely magical. It is transformative. You did more than release me from Morgana's spell. You permanently changed the structure of my soul. You integrated the beast into me and made me whole in a way that can never be undone. I know. What you may not know is that the change moved in both directions. Intensity filled his eyes. You still call yourself wolfless, but that is no longer completely accurate. I was not born with a wolf. No, but you are bonded to one. Your connection to my wolf runs so deeply that it has rewritten the structure of your own soul. My heartbeat quickened. What are you saying? That you are no longer entirely human either. You have become something between the two, something new. He smiled. You are Catherine. Unique, unprecedented, and exactly perfect. I don't understand. You once asked what the beast truly was. I told you he carried my heart everything I felt but could not express. That answer was true, but incomplete. Charles cupped my face. He also carried my truth. He was the part of me capable of seeing reality without hiding behind logic, caution, or fear. When you loved him, you allowed that truth to become part of my whole self. You gave me the ability to be honest, emotional, and complete. And what did you give me? I prompted. Purpose. Value. A place to belong. His thumb moved gently across my cheek. But more than any of those, I gave you hope, the belief that broken things can remain beautiful and that imperfection is not the same as incompleteness. We saved one another, I said softly. We chose one another every day. That was the meaning of the riddle. A promise is offered freely. It binds without force. It can always be broken, yet it becomes powerful when two people continue choosing to keep it. I looked at my wedding band, which had replaced the promise ring. The moonstone still shone at its center. I love you, I said. Both halves. Always. And I love all of you. Completely. We stood together while stars appeared above the balcony. Two people once declared broken had proven the world wrong not by repairing every fracture, but by accepting themselves as whole exactly as they were. Far to the south, in the small territory where three unlikely leaders were building a new future, Sasha stood beneath a full moon and smiled. A message had just arrived announcing that the Lunar Queen would host a summit the following spring. Leaders from every territory would gather to explore new forms of governance and better methods for resolving conflict. It would be led by a wolfless Lunar who had proven that strength could take many forms. "What are you smiling about?" Liam asked as he joined her. "Change," Sasha replied. "I'm smiling because change is coming." In the capital, Charles and Catherine fell asleep wrapped around each other. Two souls once divided and alone were now united by choice. They had learned that love was never about perfection or about finding someone to complete what was missing. Love was seeing another person fully, the fractured pieces, imperfect parts, and beautiful truths, and choosing them anyway. Not once. Every day. Forever.